Story 1. I cut my estranged son out of my will after he showed up to my wife's funeral, after being no contact for 6 years, only to ask about his inheritance and blame my dead wife for his failures. My wife of almost 3 decades passed away recently from a cardiac arrest, and I am still grieving. So, forgive me if the updates on the situation don't come soon enough, or in case I make some mistakes while narrating the incident. I am 52 years old, and so was my wife. We have a 28-year-old son together, but we have not been in touch with him for the past 6 years because of a huge fight that we had a while ago. My wife and I met when we were in high school, and it was pretty much love at first sight for me. As soon as both of us had graduated from college, we decided to get married and start a family. She decided that she was going to be a stay-at-home wife, and I could focus on working and expanding the business that my father had started. He had an advertising agency, and the plan had always been that once I graduated from college, I would take over and learn the ropes before he retired. Both my wife and I were business majors, so I did consult her before making any decisions. Even when we were in college, we had always known that this was the plan, and she didn't really mind being at home and taking care of the household either. We knew that we were equal and both our jobs were important in their own right, and we liked to believe that we would be able to raise our son the same way. But obviously, something had gone wrong in our parenting because we were not able to instill the same values in our son that we had hoped to. It all started going wrong initially when he was in high school, and we would constantly be getting reports of our son turning into a total bully. Apparently, he had been hanging out with the kind of kids who thought that it was cool to skip class and go out and smoke during school hours. Our son had never been an exceptionally brilliant student, but at least he had been disciplined and honest up until middle school. After that, I don't even know what went wrong. All I know is that one day he had suddenly gone from being an obedient and sincere child to a rule-breaking bully. My wife and I tried to discipline him several times, but it just never worked, and we even threatened to kick him out. But we knew that we would never be able to do that, and the problem was that he seemed to know it as well, which is why he never took it seriously. We kept pushing him to do better and just be a better person in general, but he did not care about it and continued to behave the way he thought was appropriate. It was quite disheartening for us as parents, and we began to feel pretty helpless. Then, after high school ended, he told us that he would not be attending college because he thought it was a waste of time and he wanted to start working straight away. He said that he hadn't even been applying and had actually been lying to us in the few months leading up to his graduation from high school. I really lost my head at that point because there was just no way that I was ready to accept that my son would not be going to college. My wife and I were very upset, and we yelled at him a lot during that period of time, but it made no difference to him, and honestly it was pretty pointless because the damage was already done, and his grades were so low anyway that I highly doubt any decent college would have accepted him. So, I decided to tell him that he could work and take a gap year if that's what he wanted, but he could no longer live with us without paying rent. He tried to fight me on that, but legally I could totally kick him out if I wanted to because he was 18, and I did not owe it to him to let him live with me without paying rent. Under usual circumstances, I probably would not have acted that way, but the way that my son had been behaving the past years before that, it was very hard for me to ignore everything and just let him have his way all the time. After a lot of fighting, it was decided that he would look for a job, and once he was able to find one, he would start paying rent. I even planned on charging him for groceries and other bills, but my wife talked me out of it and said that that would be a little too much. Within a few weeks, he had started looking for jobs and was applying to every position that was available, which made him seem quite serious about his future, and I thought that things were finally changing for him because he was actually stepping up and taking responsibility for himself. I was feeling a bit relieved, but I guess I was too quick to judge the situation because he started getting rejected by every place that he was applying to. I guess it made sense because he was only applying to high-paying positions instead of starter positions, and obviously nobody would want to hire somebody like him who had no experience and no degree either. I tried to tell him that he could start off by applying to slightly lower positions like cashier and stuff, but he said that it was beneath his dignity and he was not going to do stupid menial things like that, which was ridiculous because that's the only kind of job anybody would trust him with until he had paid his dues. I tried to explain to him that he had no experience, he did not have a college degree, and even his high school grades were pretty bad, so he could not just expect everything to be a cakewalk for him at this point in his life, and he would have to pay his dues first. But he was adamant and said that until he was able to find a job that he liked, he was not going to work for anything less than what he thought he deserved. I thought this was just a clever tactic for him to avoid working, and he could just live with us for free because the conditions that I had set forth said that he would have to pay rent after he got a job, and if he didn't get one, then he would never have to pay up. I knew what he was trying to do, so I decided to speak to a friend of mine and asked him to hire my son because there was no way that I was going to let him sit at home and do nothing when he was not even going to college. After a lot of discussions, I managed to convince my friend to give my son a paid internship at his startup, and my son had no choice but to accept it because it paid a decent amount for a starting position, and it was not menial like he said. He worked under my friend for a couple of months, and he did a decent job, so he got a permanent position as the assistant to one of the higher-ups in the company. I was quite happy about this arrangement because this way I could keep tabs on what he was up to, and he would also be able to have some sort of direction in his life instead of just wandering around aimlessly like most of the guys from his friend circle in high school. For a few years, everything was going well, and my friend told me that even though he was not the most sincere or hardworking employee, he was doing a decent job, and it was fine. They were a startup, so they could not afford to hire anybody better at the time either. Over time, their company grew, and so did my son's responsibilities and workload along with his salary. I thought it was a good thing for him because now he would have to spend more time at work and really get serious about everything, and he would also get paid more, so that was pretty good. But just a year after his first raise, he came home one day and informed my wife and me that he was quitting his job because it was just way too much work for him, and he couldn't do this anymore. I had no idea what he was talking about because as far as I was concerned, this was a great deal for him, but he was just letting it go. Obviously, I was very upset about it because it was like he had no gratitude for the opportunities that he was getting, knowing full well how difficult it had been for me to create the opportunities for him because with his qualifications and experience, it would have been incredibly difficult for him to find the kind of job that he wanted to do on his own. And now that he was finally getting paid more and could even afford to get an apartment of his own, he was thinking of quitting. This had always been my biggest issue with him because he would always just quit anytime anything got a little difficult. And that's no way to live. Because if he continued at this rate, then he would never be able to accomplish anything because everything is difficult. And if he really wanted to make something of himself, then he would have to learn to stick it out and understand that better opportunities were not going to just fall into his lap. He would have to work for it and make himself worthy of the things that he wanted. He had to learn to be tenacious instead of just giving up when the going got tough. So, I told him that if he quit his job, then he would have to move out of our house because I was sick of him and his lame excuses. Even before this, he had already been doing a decent job, but not good enough, and it was just not okay because he was 22 at the time. I think he was old enough to realize that if he wanted better opportunities, then he would have to work harder for it, and I would not always be there to bail him out and arrange work for him. And it wasn't even as though he was not getting paid enough to do the kind of work that he was expected to do. He just didn't want to do it because he was lazy and didn't enjoy the hard work but wanted the money. Unfortunately, that's not the way the world works, and you have to work for what you want. But my son was having a really difficult time coming to terms with that. So, I told him that he could either continue working where he was, or he could move out and do whatever he wanted to. But as long as he was living under my roof, he would have to live by my rules, and he couldn't just quit because he had to actually work. That day we got into a really nasty fight because he was not ready to acknowledge the facts and insisted that I was being unreasonable and way too hard on him. But I thought that this kind of tough love was quite necessary because otherwise he could end up in some bad situations in the future. So, when he told me that he wanted to quit, and I gave him that ultimatum, things escalated pretty quickly after that. And before we knew it, we were in a full-blown shouting match. He accused me of never thinking about him and being selfish, and I said that he was being ungrateful, and he needed to sort out his thoughts. While we were fighting, my wife tried to de-escalate the situation for a bit, but then my son started getting very agitated and started cussing at me, which didn't sit right with my wife. So, even she got mad and told him that he had no right to speak to me that way after everything that I had done for him and that I was actually right. And he needed to learn how to stick it out instead of just quitting anytime things got tough. And that's when my son turned to my wife and said something unforgivable. He told her that as somebody who had been living off of my salary her entire life and had never worked a day in her life, she had no right to tell him that he should continue working, and told my wife to shut up and let us speak because she had no idea what she was even talking about. It was the single most horrible thing that my son has ever said, and even in that moment, the enormity of it was not lost on either of us because what he said was disgusting and disrespectful on every conceivable level. And I immediately told him to apologize to his mother, but he refused to take it back and said that he had no regrets about saying what he did because he knew that he was right. My wife was really hurt and rushed to the bedroom so her son wouldn't be able to see her cry, and I followed her. After comforting her for a few minutes, I went back out to talk to my son and realized that he was sitting on the couch really casually as if nothing had even happened and texting on his phone. There was no trace of remorse or regret on his face. And I think that's what set me off because I then grabbed him by the arm and lifted him off the couch before telling him that I had had enough of him and he had crossed a line today that he could never take back. So now he had to leave, and I would not allow him to come back until he got his head back on straight and apologized to his mother for what he said to her. He didn't even say anything and just went back to his room. A few minutes later, he came back down, and he was carrying 2 bags that looked like they had been packed with everything that he owned. Then he walked out of the house without a word or even a glance back, and that was the last time that we saw him in person. 6 years passed after that, and we never really heard from him. He did come back a couple of days after he had moved out initially, but that was only to collect the few things that he had left behind. And after that, there was no contact between us. I heard from my friend that he had stopped showing up for work a week after our fight and had even emailed them his resignation. I thanked my friend for helping me out when I needed him, but what my son did was no longer in my control, and my wife and I had completely given up any hopes that we had from him. About 3 years after he left, we received news from a couple of our relatives that he was getting married, but we were not invited, and neither did we expect him to invite us after 3 years of not speaking to each other. We hoped that his marriage would be successful, but we did not speak to him or reach out to him, and neither did we reach out to each other when after about a year, we learned that he was going to be a father. We wanted him to be happy, but if he was happy staying away from us, then we were not going to disrupt that. So, we kept our distance for 6 long years and never spoke to him after that. My wife wanted to reach out to him on several occasions, but I told her that I would not be a part of it and that if she wanted to do so, then she could go ahead on her own. Since I did not want to speak to my son, she did not do so either, and that was that. And then, about a week ago, my wife passed away, and I have been miserable since then. It was really unexpected, and I still have no idea how to cope with this because I still feel like she will walk through the door at any given moment and try to make me laugh or say something incredibly witty. But I know that that's impossible now, and I am having a really, really difficult time dealing with this. She is the only woman I ever loved and been with, and I don't know how to live without her because I never thought the day would ever come, and I definitely didn't think that that day would come so soon. It's been a massive task organizing her funeral and everything, but I've been functioning somehow because I want it to be well organized since that's the way that she would have wanted it to be. And even though it has been a really difficult time for me, I was able to organize a decent funeral somehow just to get it over with so that I can finally deal with my emotions. Yesterday, everything was going well, and then my son showed up with his family. His wife and his son were quiet but looked sad and confused, but my son did not waste any time, and as soon as he showed up, he walked right over to me and pulled me into a hug and started crying. I had a bit of a breakdown as well, and we ended up hugging and crying for almost 5 minutes because everything was just rushing out of me, and I couldn't hold the tears in any longer. He said that he was sorry about everything, and I told him that I forgave him because his mother's funeral was no place to still be holding grudges against him, and everything that had happened in the past felt like it didn't even matter anymore because my wife was gone. And that's the only thing that I could think about. I could really do with the moral support that only my son would be able to offer me more than any friends or family. So, he apologized with tears in his eyes, and I felt like it was genuine, but I was obviously being an emotional fool. He even introduced me to my daughter-in-law and my grandson, and they were quite nice to me as well. But a few hours later, after the eulogies and everything we did, my son asked me if he could speak to me in private, and I agreed because I thought that he was going to talk to me about his mom or something less outrageous. Once we were sat in my office together, He told me that there was no easy way to bring this up at such a time, but he felt like he had to ask me because he was really in need of some extra cash at the moment and told me that he had pulled me aside to talk to me about his inheritance. I am not even kidding when I say this, but I was literally in shock when he said those words because his mother had barely been buried, and he was already talking about what he stood to gain from her demise. He went on talking and said that he was having a difficult time with money because he had recently quit another job that he had been working for the past few months, but his savings were about to dwindle out, and he was actually planning on starting his own business, but he did not have enough money to do so and was hoping that maybe if his mother had left him anything, then he would use that to fund his own business. I just patiently heard him out while he shared with me how he was living off of his wife's salary for the past few months, and it was getting really difficult for him to do so because it was very emasculating, and he needed my help at this point. After he was done talking, I told him to get out of my house immediately, and I told him never to come back because he was literally the human version of a garbage can, and I did not want him loitering anywhere near my wife and the places she held close to her heart, including our home. He looked surprised when I told him that and tried to tell me that he was just asking about the inheritance and that was no pressure on me yet to arrange something immediately. But I told him that I did not appreciate what he was trying to do and said that he needed to leave or else I would call the cops and have him escorted out. But he fought with me and told me that this was his mother's funeral, and he had every right to be here, and I could not stop him from attending. And I started screaming at him because I was already heartbroken from the passing of my wife. And now when I finally thought that my son was being a decent human being, I realized that he was actually incapable of being a good person and would always remain a total failure. So, we got into a very loud fight once again and called each other every derogatory name in the book before I finally kicked him out and requested his wife to leave with his son because I was losing my mind, and I did not want to ruin my wife's funeral with us. In a fit of anger, I decided to call our lawyer up and ask him if my wife had left anything to her son, and he told me that she had just left him some money and a few items of jewelry, which was all worth around maybe $25,000 in total. I told him that I wanted to contest the will because I wanted to make sure that he did not receive anything since he was obviously not deserving of it. But now I have calmed down considerably, and after my little outburst yesterday, I did speak to a couple of people from my family, and everybody told me that I overreacted a little, and I should have dealt with everything with a cooler head instead of reacting like that. They told me that I have every right to be mad at my son because what he did was simply disgusting. But instead of kicking him out like that and then making that very public and loud call to my lawyer and demanding that we contest the will of my wife just because I wanted to teach my son a lesson was all a bit too much. And I should really reconsider what I want to do about all of this. And I have been thinking about it, and I don't know if it's the right thing to do or not. So, am I the jerk for kicking my son out of my wife's funeral when he brought up his inheritance and trying to contest her will because of it? Update 1. So, I spoke to my lawyer and told him that I did not want to contest the will, and he told me that he had not started the proceedings anyway because he knew that I was mad about something, and once I cooled off, I would change my mind. So, that was one good thing. My lawyer and I, for context, have been friends for a very long time, and he had known my wife quite well as well. My son had actually come to the funeral shortly after he had left, so they did not run into each other, but he heard about my outburst and the fight that I had with him from other people. He advised me to think about everything with a cool head and then come to a conclusion about what I wanted to do because getting upset and making rash decisions would not help in the long run. But both of us knew that what my son said the other day was just unacceptable behavior, and I had to set him straight somehow. So, after a lot of deliberation, we decided that I was not going to contest my wife's will just to deprive him of the money and the jewelry that she had left for him, but I was definitely going to make sure that I changed my will and didn't leave him a single thing, because my wife might have had a soft corner for him in spite of everything that he did. But for me, that soft spot does not exist anymore, especially after the incident that took place a couple of days ago. I don't think I can ever forgive that, and I don't think I want to. So, my lawyer and I have decided that we are going to change the contents of the will, and I have not done it so far because against all hopes, I had foolishly believed that by the end of my life, I probably would have been able to reconcile with my son. But now that seems increasingly impossible, and I don't think I want to reconcile with a person like that because I can't even recognize him as my son anymore. He is a stranger to me, and a stranger does not deserve to be included in my will. And I have a lot of other people who I would rather leave all my money and my business to than my son because he clearly does not value me as his father. And neither did he ever value his mother when she was still alive. I guess the only good part of any of this is that my wife never had to find out what a horrible person our son had turned into. She passed away still believing that he would be able to become a better person someday. That's my only consolation. Update 2. Today, my lawyer finally contacted my son to tell him that while he would be receiving whatever his mother had left him as soon as the probate was over, he would not be receiving anything from me because, according to the contents of my will, everything was going to go to other people. Basically, everybody apart from him who had been a part of my life would be getting something or the other. And because of his little stunt at my wife's funeral, he would not be receiving anything. The only reason we even felt it was necessary to notify him was because I thought that maybe at least this knowledge would lead him to apologize to us and acknowledge that what he did was messed up. But nothing of the sort happened. Instead, he told my lawyer to tell me that he did not care whether he received anything from me or not, because he would rather be poor and miserable than receive anything from me and constantly be reminded of the fact that I had done him a huge favor because that's exactly what my intentions would be even in death. So, I guess that's it now. Update 3. Hey, almost 9 months have passed since my wife passed away, and I am doing better now. I have been in therapy, and I am trying to deal with my emotions, but it's been hard. I can't deny that. But I know that life goes on, and I also have to go on. So I've been trying my best to do right by my wife and doing everything that I knew she would want me to do because that's what is most important to me right now. I have not spoken to my son after that last phone call that my lawyer made, and neither has he reached out to me, even to check up on me. But that's kind of expected from him. I heard from a couple of people that he was moving out of state with the money that he got from his mother and was going to start up a business closer to his wife's home. So I guess that's good for him. I hope he does well in life, and I hope that I live long enough to see him succeed. But I don't wish to speak to him anymore after this. If he ever comes back to his senses and apologizes with no ulterior motives, then maybe I might think about repairing our relationship, but it seems unlikely as of now. Until then, it's just going to be me and the memory of my wife that keeps me going. I miss her, and I think about her every day, but I just know that she is in a better place now, and I hope that she's out there somewhere looking out for me in her own way. Now on to the next story. Story 2. My brother stayed friends with my cheating ex-husband, so I went no contact. Now he's broke and living with our parents, and they showed up at my house demanding money to help my brother. Hi, so I 36F, got divorced from Martin, my ex-husband, 34M, 5 years ago. We had been together for almost 6 years and married for 2 before we separated. The reason behind our divorce was his infidelity. He confessed to me that he had been having an affair with a coworker for a couple of months right after our 2-year anniversary, and that was it for me. He had said that he wanted to give our marriage another chance and wanted to come clean to me so that we could make it work. But after I found out that he had been cheating, there was no turning back. He moved out because I asked him to, and we got the divorce where I got the house and he got a second wife. As soon as the divorce was finalized, he married the coworker he had been having an affair with a couple of weeks after our divorce finally came through. Then, the two of them moved away to Philadelphia. We haven't spoken to each other or seen each other since then, so I'm kind of glad that I did not give him that second chance. The affair, unfortunately, not only ruined my marriage but also my relationship with my brother. And I'll tell you how. My younger brother, Nick, 34M, was pretty close with Martin. They were part of the same friend circle in college, and that's actually how I met him in the first place. Regardless, I had expected Nick to take my side when we were getting divorced. In spite of their friendship, Martin had cheated on me, and Nick was my brother, so it was natural for me to expect him to understand where I was coming from and be there for me. But when I told my family that I was getting a divorce from Martin because of his infidelity, to my surprise, I found out that Nick already knew about the divorce since Martin had told him about it. His advice to me was that I should stay with Martin and try to work things out because the guy really wanted to make our marriage work. I was shocked that he would even suggest something like this, and I told him that I was not going to stay with him no matter what. I also expressed that I was very disappointed that he was still choosing to stay in touch with Martin in spite of what the guy had put me through, because I was quite torn up about the divorce and the affair when I found out about it. So I had expected him to cut Martin off. However, we ended up getting into a fight over that because Nick thought that it was rather unreasonable of me to expect something like this out of him, because he and Martin had been friends for a really long time, and it was not his fault that we had chosen to get together, get married, and now we were getting divorced. He said that he would like to stay out of all of this and retain his friendship with Martin, as well as continue having a good relationship with me. I don't know if I was right or wrong, but I thought that it was a very diplomatic stance to take, and I told him that was not going to fly with me. I made it very clear to him at the time that he could either pick Martin and continue to be in touch with him, or he could have a relationship with me, his sister. I had obviously expected him to pick me because he and I had been very close growing up, so I was not okay with my brother having any sort of contact with my ex-husband, and I made that very clear to him. To my surprise, he ended up choosing to remain friends with Martin and said that I was being unreasonable. He said that I was being petty and immature, and so he thought that it was better for him to stay around people who actually valued him and were not going to make him choose between people who were both special to him just to flatter their ego, like I was apparently doing. I was very disappointed when that happened, and since then, I have also had no contact with Nick because he really let me down. He even attended Martin's second marriage with his affair partner, which was the final nail in the coffin. 5 years passed, and so far, I've never spoken to him. Our parents have tried their best to get us to reconcile, but both of us are pretty clear on where we stand. I do visit my parents on the holidays, and he does as well. We do see each other at other family events like weddings and stuff, but we never speak to each other. I don't even have anything to say to him. I keep hearing from my parents about the important things that go on in his life, the milestones and whatnot. So, I know that a couple of years ago, he started his new graphic design business. Until then, he had been a freelancer and had been doing pretty well for himself. So he decided to start his own business with a couple of his other buddies. It's been 3 years, and from what I heard from my parents, they have been doing decent enough. I thought it was good for them. But then, a couple of days back, I received a phone call from my parents saying that Nick was in a lot of trouble and that they needed me to help him out. Now, apparently, Nick had not been entirely truthful with them about how well his business was doing, and now he was drowning in debt and had even been evicted from his apartment since he hadn't paid the rent in the last 6 months. So now he had nowhere to go, and unlike his friends, he was too proud to just move back in with his parents or even ask them to cover his rent. I don't know what to say to that. I just told them that it was really sad for him and I wish I could help because I thought that's what they wanted me to say. But other than that, I had nothing else. Then they said that maybe I could help him out by letting him live with me instead. As of now, he has no apartment and has been staying with his girlfriend, but she lives with a roommate, so he can't live with her for longer than a couple of weeks, and 1 week has already passed. So, he needs to find a place quickly, at least temporarily, so he can just stay there for a couple of months until he's able to get back on his feet. Now, apparently, they had offered to let him stay with them, but he had refused, saying that he was not going to move back in with his parents after living apart from them for so long. They also offered to give him money so he could survive on his own, but he had refused it as well. So now they were reaching out to me to help him out. I made it very clear to them that I was not going to reach out to him since we hadn't spoken in 5 years, and not only would it be awkward, but it was also something that I wasn't interested in doing. I had enough on my plate already. I don't feel the need to take on somebody else's problems as well. They insisted that I was the only person who could talk to him and make sense, and maybe take my help if I offered it because he and I used to be really close. So, I reminded them that we used to be close, but we're not exactly on speaking terms anymore, and I tried to explain to them that if he had refused to take help from them, it was very unlikely that he would accept it from me. But my parents were just not ready to hear me out and kept insisting that I should reach out to him and offer him my help. So ultimately, I had to be very firm. I told them I was not going to talk to him, and that was my final decision. Then they started getting all whiny and manipulative on the call and said that I was being very selfish and that I needed to think about my brother instead of being egoistic. Apparently, according to them, my ego had already ruined our relationship once, and I was about to let it happen again by not even bothering to talk to him when he was at his lowest. They think that talking to him would make a lot of difference because when we used to be on good terms, he used to idolize me. I could tell that they were trying to manipulate me emotionally, but I'm afraid that it worked. I had an internal conflict about whether or not to reach out to my brother and offer him my help. Update 1. Okay, so I thought about it and I decided against reaching out to my brother. I did some thinking, spoke to a couple of friends, and read the comments on my post, and everybody was of the same opinion. That what my brother had done in the past was incredibly wrong and disrespectful, and so I did not owe it to him to reach out and help him out when he hadn't even asked for it. If he contacts me first and asks me to help him out, that's going to be a different conversation. But just because my parents believe that I should reach out to him by myself doesn't mean that I have to do it. It's been 4 days since I last spoke to them, and this morning I called them up to let them know about my decision. Every single day since I put up my original post here, they had been calling and texting me to ask me if I had spoken to Nick yet or not, and today I finally had to tell them to back off because I was not going to do what they had asked me to. When I said that, they got all manipulative and tried to tell me that I was the only person who could solve this. So, I made it very clear to them that I didn't care if I was the only person. It was not my problem to deal with, and so I was not going to involve myself in this unnecessarily. And then my parents said that it was a problem that Nick was dealing with, and since he was my brother, it was my problem as well. Apparently, they believe that since we are family, we should all treat each other's problems like our own issues and deal with them accordingly. It's interesting how they said that to me, but they did not have the same opinion back when Nick and I were fighting over what to do with the whole Martin situation. By their logic, if Martin had cheated on me and that was causing havoc in my life, Nick should have immediately cut Martin off because it should have been his problem as well. So, it doesn't make sense for them to apply these newfound morals to me but not to him. I even brought these things up with them to ask why they did not have the same opinion when I was going through something, and they had no answer for that. So instead, they said that I was twisting their words and that I was just looking for an excuse not to help my brother out, and it was extremely selfish and disgraceful. That's when they did not have any for themselves or Nick and were just trying to make me look like the bad guy. So, I told them that I was fine with doing selfish and disgraceful things, but for now, I had made up my mind and told them to stop bothering me. I thought that it would be the end of the conversation, and I was about to hang up as well. But then my mother said something, and that really pissed me off. She said that she had always known that I had a massive ego, and that was probably a failing in their own parenting skills, but she had never expected me to turn out to be so heartless and said that maybe Nick was right for choosing Martin over me. Everybody knows that that's my sore spot, and I really don't like people bringing that up. So, I knew that she had chosen to bring it up on purpose because she wanted to hurt me by what she said, and she had succeeded. It really pissed me off, and I was very upset when I heard that. So, I immediately forgot about hanging up and confronted her about what she had said. I literally yelled at her because I had lost my temper and said that she had no right to say things like that when she knew very well that what had happened with Martin and Nick was not right. There was just no justification for it. And she tried to defend herself by saying that she knew that what Nick had done back then was wrong, but judging by the way I was acting now, she was forced to think that maybe it was the right choice to make in the long run because clearly I was too selfish to think about anybody but myself. It was so frustrating to even have that conversation with her because they were so blind and idiotic, but I was so angry at that moment that I didn't even realize it was pointless to argue with them. I just wanted to get all the anger out of my system and keep yelling at them until they admitted that they were wrong for what they had said. So we kept arguing for almost 15 minutes. My parents kept calling me selfish, and I said that they were disrespectful and only cared about my brother but not my feelings. At the end of the argument, I just told them that I never wanted to speak to them or hear from them ever again, and I was done. Then I finally hung up, and I blocked their phone numbers immediately. Since then, I've been trying to calm down, but it's very difficult because I've been so riled up since the conversation. I texted a couple of my friends to vent about my feelings, and they said that I was right to block them and that if they try to contact me again, I should just not respond to them because they have made their priorities very clear, and I don't need to entertain any of this anymore. I have a life of my own, problems of my own, so I should just focus on that, and I guess I'm going to do that. Now I have given enough time and energy to these people, way more than they deserve. Update 2. So, it's been a week since I blocked my parents, and since then, we have not had any contact. I assumed that they would quit and not bother me anymore after I had blocked them and made it so clear to them that I was not going to give them what they wanted. But today, after I came back home from work, I saw that my parents had pulled up to my house and were waiting outside. I'd had a long day at work and had been swamped, so I was pretty exhausted, and I was in no mood to deal with any of this. So, as soon as I pulled up to the front of my house, I honked twice and I told them to get out of here or I'd call the cops on them for trespassing. Instead of leaving, they came up to my car and said that they wanted to speak to me and they were really not in the mood to fight with me right now, so I just needed to give them some time and come out instead of acting like this. I was exhausted. I really was not in the mood to discuss anything to do with Nick right now, so I really wanted them to leave, and I promised that I would unblock them and speak to them later, but right now I needed my space and time. But then they told me that Nick had moved back in with them because right now he had no choice. His girlfriend had made it very clear that she could not let him stay with her for more than 2 weeks, and 2 weeks had already passed. So he had tried to speak to her and get her to extend it, but she told him that her roommates were not fine with this. So he needed to leave since she had made a promise to them that she would not let him live with them for more than 2 weeks, and this was only temporary. But after that, if he continued to stay with her, he would have to split the rent and cost of everything else with them since she couldn't just allow him to live with them for free just because he was her boyfriend. And they got into a fight over that because Nick thought that she was being unreasonable and that she should have been more considerate about his position since he was having to shut down his business and did not have a source of income right now. So now he can't even go back there anymore. Again, it was sad, but it had nothing to do with me. So, I told my parents that I was still not going to talk to him and let him live with me if that's what they were here for. So, they told me that that's not why they were here. They were here to actually ask me for financial help because now that Nick had moved back in with them, they were going to have to cover the cost of everything, and both of them were retired so they couldn't afford to exactly support him without worrying about their own future, and they do not want to overexert themselves. So, they were asking me to help them out financially. They said that I wouldn't even have to speak to Nick. I just had to give some money to them for the next couple of months until Nick was able to get back on his feet. This time, they expected me to agree without much of a fuss since they said that they had done a lot for me over the years and had raised me to be capable enough to do well for myself right now, so I owed it to them to help them out when they were asking for it. I did not want to say anything, so I said that I had to think about it and let them know because right then I was very tired from work and I was not going to make a decision that very moment. I thought it was pretty reasonable to ask for some time to think because what they were asking from me was a big deal. For starters, I didn't even know what kind of amount I would have to send every month, and on top of that, there was no telling when or even if Nick would be able to get back on his own 2 feet soon enough, so I needed to think about this before I made any commitment and I needed time for that. But instead of giving me that time and respecting what I had said, they decided to start pressuring me right there. I was literally sitting in the car, and they kept saying that I had to do this, I owed it to them and stuff, and that was pissing me off more and more. So, I got out of my car and I told them that I had had enough of their BS, and they had to clear out or I would really call the cops. They thought that I was bluffing and said that they knew I was not going to do anything of the sort. So, I told them not to test me and I gave them one final warning. But even then, they did not leave, so I whipped my phone out and called the cops like I said I would. I did it right in front of them, and the look of shock on their faces was worth seeing. Then they were so stupid that, instead of just leaving and saving themselves, they decided to stand there and argue with me until the cops came and had to drag them off. Anyway, it's over now, and I'm keeping them blocked. I have also spoken to my lawyer, and I think that we are going to have to file for a restraining order against them because things are getting out of hand, and I can't deal with this again and again. Update 3. Hi, so a couple of days back, I had my parents show up at my house, and I said that I was going to file for a restraining order. Yesterday, I finally spoke to my lawyer and we decided that we were going to go ahead with it, and today we filed the petition. I honestly hope that I am able to get the protective order against them because what they've been doing is getting out of hand. I had blocked them quite some time ago, so they couldn't exactly contact me normally, and that's why I guess they decided to harass me in other ways. I don't exactly know how they managed to do it. They probably paid somebody or something, but ever since I called the cops on them, things have been going pretty weirdly. That day itself, nothing really happened, but the next day I started receiving calls from a bunch of numbers, and I answered the phone calls a couple of times at first, but as soon as I could pick up the phone, they would hang up from the other end. So I blocked the phone number, but then the same thing started happening with other numbers, and eventually, I decided not to answer any calls from numbers that I did not recognize because it was getting really weird and creepy. As if that was not bad enough, I started receiving messages from these numbers as well, saying that I would have to face the consequences of what I had done and that my parents were never going to forgive me. There was also a lot of name-calling involved where I was being addressed as a selfish brat and whatnot, and some curse words that I will not be repeating here since they were just that bad. I know for a fact that it's my parents behind this, and that was all the more reason for me to go to my lawyer and file for a restraining order because I don't think that any of this is normal. After this, I don't think they should expect any sort of help from me at all. I had been trying to respect the fact that we were family and was not taking any sort of action against them earlier, but now I don't think I need to care about them since they clearly don't care about my mental health or well-being. It's just very disappointing since they know that I've been through a lot in the past with my divorce from Martin, and for a couple of years after that, I was not doing particularly well in my career either. So, I've had my fair share of problems, and now when I'm finally doing well, it seems like they can't stand it and want to pull me down. I can't imagine claiming to love your child and acting like this, but I guess they don't really love me and it's fine. I have accepted that, and it doesn't matter to me. Update 4. So, it's been a couple of weeks since my last update, and long story short, I managed to get a restraining order against my parents. There was a lot of fighting, but I did get it. I'm really glad about it because from what I know, Nick is no longer living with them because of how psychotic they have been acting. I was pretty busy with work since I've just taken on a new project, so I did not have time to post any new updates. Anyway, after my parents were served, they could not contact me because it would be too dicey, especially after everything that they had already done. So, I guess they decided to talk to Nick about it and he was the one who contacted me. I had never blocked him. I didn't feel the need to because after we stopped speaking to each other, I didn't think that either of us would reach out, so there was no point in blocking each other. Also, I just kind of forgot about it. Anyway, he messaged me saying that he was really disappointed that I had taken such an extreme step against our parents after everything that they had done for us. It was the same old routine. He reminded me that they had raised us to be the people that we are now, and we should be grateful to them, but I was being insolent and disrespectful. I got very pissed off when I read that message because it was just so pretentious, and I told him that it was obviously easier for him to say that since they were going above and beyond in their attempts to help him out. I guess he also wanted to have a go at me and call me selfish and entitled for not helping him out with the money that he required, and to that message he replied saying that he had never asked me to help him out, and he would never even expect it from me because I was really that selfish. So, I told him that he did not need to ask me for it because our parents were doing all the talking on his behalf already, so if he wanted somebody to blame for this situation, he could just look in the mirror. I guess he was not aware of the fact that our parents had been hounding me to help him out for so long because when I sent that message, he immediately called me up, and I answered the phone because I really just wanted to talk about this and get it over with. So, he asked me what I was talking about because he did not recall telling our parents that he wanted any sort of help. I told him about everything that had happened, and he hung up abruptly as soon as I was done. I sort of knew that Nick probably wouldn't have known how our parents had been hounding me and disturbing me all this while, so I decided to bring it up with him on purpose, and after that I did not hear back from him. But I heard from other people in the family that apparently Nick had moved out of the house and was now living with a friend of his instead of his parents because he had realized that our parents had been asking me to help them with money so they could help him out, and initially, they had even been asking me to reach out to him and offer him my help, which clearly meant that they thought he was incapable of handling the situation on his own, and apparently he believed that this was an attack on him and his capabilities, and so they got into a really nasty fight. How exactly did my relatives find out about this? Obviously, my parents were the ones who had been crying about how I had not only ruined my relationship with everybody around me, but now I had gone out of my way to speak out of turn and managed to brainwash my brother against them as well. So, a couple of my family members who had been contacted by my parents came to me and said that what I was doing was very wrong. So, I decided to make this known to them as well, and after everybody knew the real and whole story, including what my parents had done to me, which had warranted these actions from my end, they seemed to realize that maybe I was not in the wrong and apologized to me for attacking me without knowing the full truth. So now, basically, nobody from the family is speaking to my parents, and they have kind of been ostracized by everyone. I can't say that they don't deserve it because after everything that my parents have put me through, I definitely think that this is exactly what needed to happen. Nobody speaks to them anymore, and I'm sure that they blame me for it, but unfortunately, because of the restraining order, they can't even do anything about it. But that does not mean that Nick and I are suddenly on good terms again. We are still no contact with each other, and that's the way it's going to be until he realizes how he had screwed up in the past. But given his attitude towards life, I highly doubt that it's going to happen anytime soon. He's always going to be too proud and invested to admit his own mistakes, and that's just like our parents. It's so typical, but whatever, as long as my life is going well, I don't need to bother myself with any of this. Now I'm just going to focus on my new projects and living well, and that's it. Now on to the next story. Story 3. Girlfriend pretended to kidnap my daughter as a prank. I freaked out and called the cops. Now she's blaming me. I, 28M, have been with my girlfriend, Alyssa, 25F, for almost 8 months now. We met at her cousin's wedding, who happens to be a coworker of mine. I also have a daughter from a previous relationship. My daughter, Isabel, is 6 years old, and her mother and I are still in touch. We have a joint custody arrangement, and we get to have her for alternate months. Last month, I was the one who was supposed to look after her. My ex-girlfriend, Meg, 27F, and I broke up 2 years ago because she wanted a break from our relationship, but that just turned into a breakup. She'd said that things were going too fast for us, and she wanted time to recenter and focus on her work instead. We were supposed to be apart for a couple of weeks, but that turned into months and then eventually years. Meg and I had met in college, and we'd been good friends at first but started dating around our second year. We didn't intend on having a baby, but when we found out that she was pregnant, she decided that she wanted to have the child, and I respected that. I didn't plan on being a father at such a young age, but I didn't mind either, and now I wouldn't change anything about my life. My relationship with Meg, however, ended abruptly just a few months after the birth of our daughter. We've remained on good terms and have continued co-parenting our daughter, but I'd say we still have certain unresolved issues. That was part of the reason why I hadn't allowed Alyssa to get very close to Isabel emotionally, because I didn't know how Meg would take it. This was the first time either of us was in a relationship after our breakup, and we didn't really have any ground rules about partners. She seemed chill about it when I told her, though, so I didn't think too much about it and introduced Alyssa to my daughter 3 months into our relationship after making sure Meg was okay with it. The two of them hit it off well, and I was pleased to see that. Then, last week, towards the end of the month, I had a business trip that I had to go away on. I'd be away for 3 whole days, so I needed someone to watch over Isabel. Of course, I contacted Meg first, but it was pointless because she'd been visiting home. She wouldn't be back before this week as she was stuck in a snowstorm, and no flights or other modes of travel were going to be safe. I tried to get my trip postponed, but it was sort of an emergency, and I absolutely had to be there in person because this was a really important client that we were talking about here. I couldn't hire a sitter because I don't feel comfortable leaving my daughter home with someone who's practically a stranger. Whenever I have to leave for work and can't watch my daughter, I usually either ask Meg or my parents, so I don't have a sitter usually. I couldn't ask my parents this time either, because my mom was sick and still recovering. So eventually, I thought that I'd have to cancel the trip. I didn't ask Alyssa yet because I wasn't sure if she'd want to babysit my daughter for such a prolonged period of time, and she hadn't spent any time in person with her yet either. It had always been under my supervision. I trusted her in everything, but I wasn't sure if she'd say yes. I'd already prepared myself mentally to skip this trip, but surprisingly, when I told her about the problem, she offered to babysit Isabel herself and even seemed very excited about it. She was happy about the one-on-one bonding experience she'd get to have with Isabel, and I decided that it was the right thing to do. Of course, I also made sure that it was okay with Meg as well, and only then did I leave for my trip. The first 2 days went smoothly, and I was able to finalize the deal that I'd had to leave for, so I was quite happy. Alyssa also seemed to be getting along well with Isabel, and I'd been FaceTiming them every morning and every night before bed, so I knew they were doing okay. On the 3rd day, things went south because Alyssa decided to pull a really stupid prank on me. For context, Alyssa and I have had a running gag about how if it were up to her, Alyssa would run away with Isabel because she adores her. It's just a harmless joke. Really? And we've never ever thought about it as anything more. I know Alyssa isn't crazy and she won't actually do that, but on the morning of my third day, I received a call from my daughter, and she told me that she'd found Alyssa in my bedroom just a couple of minutes ago, and she'd been talking to a red-haired man wearing suspenders. I knew by the description that she was talking about my friend and my lawyer, Ruben. My daughter also told me that Alyssa had packed all her clothes and toys in 2 bags and had told her that they were about to go on an adventure without me. So she'd called me to ask why exactly I wasn't going to be with them on this adventure. At that moment, I was freaked out because if my daughter was telling the truth, there was something really wrong that was going to happen. Something about my lawyer being present there along with my daughter's claims that their bags were packed and they were about to leave without me just didn't sit right with me, and I think every parent would have been freaked out by something like this. I'd also only given Isabel a spare phone that she knew she was supposed to use only if she felt weird or uncomfortable in any situation, and if she'd taken the trouble to call me, then there was definitely something going on. At least, that's what I believed at the time. I called Alyssa first, but she didn't answer it, and that freaked me out even more. So without thinking much, I decided to call 911 and CPS both at the same time because I was panicking really hard. I tried to call my daughter back to tell her that she was not to leave the house, but she didn't answer my call. So then I called my dad and told him to get to my house ASAP after explaining the situation to him as quickly as I could. Luckily, my mother was feeling better, so she could take care of herself for a while, and my dad left as soon as he received my call. For about 20 minutes or so, I sat there in my hotel room trying desperately to get to either my dad or my daughter. I had no idea what was going on, and I was too scared to even leave the room to head towards the airport because what if they finally got back to me but I wasn't able to receive their messages or calls because I was on a flight back home. So I stayed where I was and continuously kept praying for some news from them. Finally, I received a call from a cop saying that they'd only found Alyssa and my daughter at my house playing with blocks, and there was no red-haired man or packed bags in sight. He told me that Alyssa insisted that it was all just a prank and that I just reacted out of panic. There was nothing strange happening at home, and everything was just fine. My dad had arrived at the scene just a couple of minutes after the cops and had been there to inspect the scene along with them. Apparently, Alyssa was the one who'd even made that phone call to me and made Isabel say all that to me just to freak me out and mess with me for a bit. They hadn't answered the calls on purpose because they'd wanted to carry on the prank, but unfortunately, it had backfired pretty badly. I thought that story checked out because Alyssa did think of herself as a funny person, but she often wasn't. I didn't speak to Alyssa directly and got to know the truth from the cop who'd been sent to my house. So after he cleared it up for me, I thanked him and apologized for the inconvenience and then hung up. After that was done, I called my dad and told him to take Isabel home with him. I was going to take the flight home that evening, so it was just a matter of hours. I didn't call Alyssa because I didn't feel like talking to her, and I had nothing to say to her anyway. What she'd done had been extremely immature and stupid, and I didn't feel like talking to her at all. She texted me to tell me that she'd locked the house and kept the spare keys under the fake plant like I usually do, and also mentioned that there had been no need for me to overreact the way I had because it was just a prank. She said she felt insulted that I'd even insinuated that she was going to run away with Isabel and that I thought so less of her. I didn't respond to those texts at the time because I was really mad at her for her stupid prank and had no intention of talking to her before I'd calmed down enough. I came back about a week ago from the trip and spent the next 2 days with Isabel at home until Meg returned and took over. I told her all about the incident with Alyssa once she'd come back because I didn't want her to worry and panic the way I'd had to when I was on my own in the hotel, and surprisingly, she seemed a lot more relaxed than I was. She told me that what I'd done was reasonable enough and she definitely would have reacted the same way. But now that I knew it was just a prank, I should at least talk to Alyssa and try to make things right with her if I want this relationship to last. Meg believes that my reaction was natural, but now that it's all done with, we should try to talk to each other. I don't agree, and I think if anyone owes the other an apology, it's Alyssa who should apologize to me first. She hasn't even tried to talk to me after I ignored her texts, and even in those texts, she didn't mention a word about being sorry for what she'd done. She just told me that she felt insulted that I called CPS on her and blamed me for reacting in a way that most parents would have. It's also unfair to put it all on me when she was equally responsible for this because she's the one who thought it would be fun not to answer my calls afterward. I had tried to call her first thing after Isabel called me, but she didn't pick up, so I panicked and did whatever I thought was most necessary at the moment. I'd always known she'd been joking about running away with Isabel, but I still didn't think it was worth taking that risk. She'd even taken the trouble of teaching my daughter to mention Ruben, so what was I to think? She created a hyper-realistic situation for me to worry about just to prank me, and because her prank backfired, she decided to blame me for all of it without thinking even for once what I might have been going through. I don't think that's fair at all. I like Alyssa a lot, and I think that after Meg, she's probably been the only woman whom I've been so close to, so I don't want to lose her. I also don't think it's my fault entirely that this happened. But then again, I'm the one who hasn't responded to her texts yet. ITA for calling CPS on my girlfriend while she was babysitting my daughter after she tried to prank me and made me think that she was really going to run away with her? Update 1. So first things first, thanks to everyone who commented on the original post. The response was overwhelming and eye-opening, to say the least. I guess I really wasn't the problem here, and the comments made sure I knew that. Now I don't even think that I overreacted because when it comes to my daughter, I'd rather be safe than sorry. She wanted to prank me and make me think that she was running away with Isabel, and she succeeded. So what exactly did she think was going to happen after that? She's the one who didn't think her plan through, and she's lucky she got out of this without any legal trouble. I explained the same to Meg, and she seemed pretty nonchalant about it because apparently the only reason she'd even told me to get back to Alyssa and talk to her was because she thought I liked her. I could sense that there was a hint of some jealousy while we were discussing it, but that might just have been my imagination. I don't know for sure, but there was something about the way she said it to me. Either way, she told me that, at the end of the day, it was my decision what I wanted to do about my relationship, and I agreed with that. So I've decided to break up with Alyssa and end things as politely as I can. After what has happened, it's been 3 days since I posted here and 10 days in total since my last conversation with Alyssa. So I'm sure things are going to be awkward. I've decided to do it at my house instead of some cafe or restaurant because under no circumstances do I want it to feel like a date and give her false hopes. I've already texted her and called her over, so she's going to be here in a couple of hours after work. The reason I'm on Reddit right now sharing everything is because I'm nervous and don't know how this is going to go. I've never broken up or dumped someone in almost a decade, and it's a stupid thing to be nervous about, yet here we are. I'm just hoping that I'm able to end things with her and don't end up taking her back or something. Update 2. We broke up. She left 2 hours ago after almost 1.5 hours of arguing about whose fault this whole thing was. I'm not a very confrontational person usually, but I couldn't just let her put all the blame on me and then act as if she was a saint who could do no wrong. She had to own up and take accountability to at least some degree because she'd actually scared me with her stupid little prank. At first, she told me that she was glad I'd invited her because she said she wanted to end things with me and was looking for the right opportunity to do so. I was relieved because at least we were on the same page about breaking up, and so I told her that I agreed and that we should indeed break up. When I said that, she got mad and started telling me that she'd expected me to at least apologize for my behavior before coming to this conclusion, and that's where our argument began. She kept saying that I'd insulted her by calling the cops on her because that meant I thought she was crazy and would run away with my daughter, which she never would. I tried to explain that the only reason I'd done it was because I couldn't get through to her and I was stuck in another city, so I was naturally worried about my daughter. She kept arguing with me endlessly and called me paranoid, saying that I always overreacted and that I was the one who owed her an apology. After a while, I finally realized there was no point in trying to explain the situation to her because she was so self-involved that she couldn't even bring herself to think about my feelings about the situation and only cared about herself. Besides, I was getting exhausted from arguing with her, and I had no intention of letting her sit on my couch in my living room and then yell at me for doing something normal. So I told her that I was done with her in this relationship, and she could leave because I wasn't interested in talking to her anymore. She took that personally and then stood up and screamed a bunch of cursed words at me, then told me that I'd never been good enough for her anyway and she could find someone better than me within a week of being single. I told her she was welcome to do so, but right now she had to leave because she was giving me a migraine and I couldn't tolerate the sound of her shrieking anymore. She then left in a really foul mood and kept mumbling under her breath. I'm sure she was cursing at me, but I didn't care. I was just glad that she was finally gone now because she just wasted 1.5 hours of my life with her nonsensical arguments. I don't know how I'd ever even considered giving her a second chance at this relationship because she definitely doesn't deserve to be a part of my or my daughter's life at all. Update 3. So it's just been a day, but the repercussions of the breakup have already started taking its toll on me. Alyssa didn't talk to me directly after she left, but late at night she decided to text Meg instead. She didn't have her number, so she sent her a message on Instagram instead. It wasn't a very nice message, and it accused Meg of trying to ruin the relationship I had with Alyssa by poisoning me against her. This is just so stupid because while we were arguing yesterday, Meg didn't even come up even once. Like, we didn't even mention Meg, so I don't know where that came from out of the blue. Throughout the 8 months that we dated, Alyssa must have met Meg 3 times and has never spent one time with her, so I don't know where she got that from. She didn't even know that it was actually Meg who had tried to encourage me to speak to her again. And if she'd known, I don't think she would have said the things she did. She called Meg a lot of things, including homewrecker and the B word several times for no real reason apart from needing a scapegoat. I was furious when I found out in the morning because when Meg had tried to inform me, I was already asleep. I told her that I was going to call Alyssa and talk to her, but Meg told me not to because this was an attempt to get a reaction out of me, and after thinking about this for a while, she didn't think it was a good idea for me to contact her at all. I'm not happy about it, but she's right, so I decided to block her instead. If she tries anything funny, then I'll probably just speak to my coworker about it and try to get him to put an end to that because from what I know, they're kind of close and share a good relationship, so he might be able to help me. We haven't had the opportunity to discuss any of this yet, but I plan on talking to him soon enough. The issue is that he works in a different department and we don't get to see each other often, but I'm sure that Alyssa must have told him something or the other. His behavior towards me hasn't changed in the past week or so, but I'm sure now that Alyssa and I have broken up for good, she'll leave no stone unturned to disrupt my life. I'm stunned. I never realized she had this crazy side of hers during our relationship because this is something I should have been able to tell. To think I'd left her with my daughter for ages just feels weird now, but at least I was able to end this relationship before it went too far. I hope she leaves this alone now. Update 4. Hey everyone, so this update is not going to be about Alyssa, even though she hasn't left me alone at all. In happier news, Meg and I have decided to give things another try. It's been 2 weeks since the last update, and 5 days ago Meg visited me with Isabel and said that she had something important to discuss with me. Turns out my hunch about her feeling a tad bit jealous of Alyssa had been right, and she confessed that she'd been feeling confused about her own feelings, and so she pretended to be all right with me going back to Alyssa even though that's not what she wanted at all. She regretted ever asking for a break and then breaking up because initially it had just been the stress of work and our relationship and our future that was getting to her. But after she sorted out the work front, she was too embarrassed to come back to me and just ended up letting me go. And I never asked her about it either, so she figured I didn't want to come back. It had just been a misunderstanding on an epic level, and we regret it now. Looking back, we were both really just young and stupid and had no idea what we were doing. We let our pride get in the way of our happiness, but hopefully that won't happen again. Meg and I have decided to go out on a few dates in the coming weeks to test the waters, and if it all works out well, then we might move back in together. That'll work out well for Isabel too. Honestly, I'm excited because I've missed Meg, and I'm sure she's missed me too, even though we were too proud to admit it. I'd feel bad for Alyssa, but I tried my best in that relationship. She's the one who screwed it up, so I'm not going to sit here and feel guilty for moving on with Meg after that. Speaking of Alyssa, she's still harping on about my supposed overreaction and tells everyone she knows about the same. My coworker actually stopped speaking to her over this because he believed that my reaction was completely justified. I've spoken to Ruben, and even he thinks that she went too far. Ruben and I are close, and he's met Alyssa a couple of times, but for her to bring him up in her so-called prank just to freak me out and annoy him too. I mean, of course he did, because in a way she was trying to make me doubt him and his intentions as well. My coworker and I talked about Alyssa just a week ago, and he told me that she's been insufferable since the breakup and has been painting herself as the victim of some great tragedy, which she isn't. When he called her out on her BS, she got mad at him too, and that's how they ended up not speaking to each other at all. She's still sending me texts through multiple accounts, but none of them are cute ones, only ones that call me crazy and psycho. Like, yeah, we can all see who's crazy now. I haven't responded to her yet, but I will speak to Ruben once he's a little less busy, so that we can start looking into protective orders because I don't want her loitering near my house at any point if this escalates. Not because I'm worried for myself, but because of Isabel. I don't like to think about it, but with people like Alyssa, there's really no telling what she'll do just to get back at me. Especially once she finds out that Meg and I are getting back together once more. Update 5. Some of you guys weren't happy that Meg and I were getting back together and were actually sympathizing with Alyssa, but back when she pulled an insensitive prank on me, Meg and I were just friends and nothing more. I've always been respectful of boundaries, and there has been no cheating at all, emotional or otherwise, so I don't think anyone should jump to conclusions unnecessarily. That being said, now Meg and I are properly back together, and she's even scheduled to move in this week. It's been a month since the last update, and Alyssa has since apologized to me in an email because apparently she'd been diagnosed with BPD a couple years back. But she stopped going to therapy because she felt like she was getting better. It explains the weird behavior because she says she's more prone to anger issues now than before, which is what caused that reaction. And there's just a lot of other messed up stuff going on with her which I didn't know before. Her father passed away a few weeks before we broke up, and she had a strained relationship with him, which is probably what triggered her very inexplicable behavior. Not the prank. That was very much her, but whatever came after. I wish her the best, but we're not in touch anymore. Now on to the next story. Story 4. I married my childhood sweetheart. Years later, I found out he's been cheating on me since our marriage. I, 23F, and my husband, 23M, met when we were 9 and started dating at 12. Mind you, this was that middle school type of dating. He cheated on me when we were 15 or 16. At this point, we were on again, off again, which continued until we were 17. I got a full ride to a university across the country for athletics and academics when I was 18. My first and only semester there I hated. I hated the team and the coaches, and I had no friends. He flew out to visit me and we got engaged at 18 years old. He flew back a little over a month later and we had a courthouse wedding. I came home after the semester finished. He was 18 and I was 19 when he joined a very difficult/prestigious branch of the military. He left for 3 months for training, which was difficult, but we did fine. He came back for a few weeks and then left for a few more months for school for his particular job. During this time, I would later find out, he signed himself up on Bumble and paid $50 plus dollars in upgrades for more swipes. He insists he never met anyone from it, and no conversations that he had were ever anything more than introductions. He also, again I would later find out a few years later, spent over $600 at a strip club. He says he was pressured by seniors to go and ended up paying for a VIP room for one of his buddies because he got the room and then didn't have the money to pay for it, and my husband said his friend was going to get into trouble. That weekend he would go up and down the coast going to various clubs and another strip club from what I've gathered. At 19, we moved states and got our first house together. At 20, he deployed. This would be a very difficult time in our lives, and even more difficult after he got home. He developed a pornography addiction while deployed. I remember sitting on the bathroom floor at 4 in the morning refreshing one of his social media accounts, which I could see his following numbers go up about every 5 minutes, all porn accounts. He pressured me for pictures and videos, and I would feel guilty for not doing the things he wanted, and I felt like if I didn't, he was just going to find someone else to do it for him. He came home 6 months later and we were okay, except I noticed after a few weeks that as soon as he came home from work, he would practically run to the bathroom and shower for 45 plus minutes. Sometimes I would even go into the bathroom after and I could tell he dropped the bottle of lube on the ground and it was still slippery, or I could see the ring on the counter from the bottom of the bottle. I did my best to ignore it until one day I saw a charge on our account for $30 to someone with a very interesting name. I confronted him and he immediately looked away, took in a deep breath, brushed his hand through his hair, and sputtered out a quick excuse that it was his buddy's wife who bought them all lunch during work. I don't know why, but I said okay and left it at that. He got up a few minutes later saying he felt sick and went to lay down. I got a text from him an hour later saying he was sorry and that he developed a pornography addiction over deployment, and he sent money to a girl for her premium Snapchat or something. He says he felt so guilty he didn't even look at anything and he deleted her right after he sent the money. I realized that the day this transaction took place, he had bought me flowers. He has never done that before, not even on any special occasions. From here on, the dates get confusing for me. I don't remember what happened first or when or how far apart, but I'll do my best to include as much information as I remember. Sometime later, maybe weeks, maybe months, I woke up to a message from an old acquaintance on a certain social media. I think we were still 20 or maybe 21. I don't remember what exactly she said. Something along the lines of, "I just wanted you to know. Ex-boyfriend's name said this to me." Or something like that. He had messaged her the night prior whilst drinking at a friend's house down the road that he loved and missed her. I wish so badly I could remember more, but for some reason I can't. I know she said something like, "You can't be saying this, you're married." And he said something along the lines of, "I don't care." I screamed at him to wake up, but he was still drunk. I told him I wanted a divorce. I locked myself in the bathroom and hurt myself because I wanted to feel anything other than how I felt at that moment. I don't know how much time passed when he opened the door. He said he didn't send those messages. He said that he left his phone plugged into the speaker and his friend was using it to play music. He said his friend must have seen the girl's story and messaged her trying to get nudes. He even pulled out his phone with proof, a text conversation between him and his friend confirming that the friend had messaged her and said he was sorry. I don't know why, but I believed him immediately. I remember having the most euphoric feeling of, I don't know what the word is, but whatever you feel when you let out a breath you've been holding and say, "Oh, thank God." I'm getting frustrated writing this because I'm realizing how much I'm forgetting and I feel like I'm missing something. At 21, I think shit hit the fan. I think at this point I had gone through his phone several times and found internet history and links that he had clicked through one of his social media accounts to hundreds of different OnlyFans sites. One night, I went through his entire dollar account history since 2018 and found the charge for the strip club and Bumble. He said the Bumble charge wasn't him. It was a senior who used his card because his had gotten frozen or something ridiculous like that. I of course believed him. I don't know why. I can't remember at what point I found out that he lied about messaging the girl on social media. I think it was after I had looked through his phone again and I found text messages between him and his friend that was the one who allegedly sent the messages. His friend said something like, "Bro, I can't even go to parties that your wife is at because she hates me LOL," or something like that. But they both confirmed what I didn't want to believe. My husband had taken my phone, deleted the messages sent to me by the girl, and got his friend in on this elaborate story. I can't remember when I found out that he did in fact download and pay for upgrades on Bumble. I think I just knew at this point he was lying and grilled him long enough that he relented. He said he never met anyone or anything, and he said during the conversation, "I only paid for the upgrade because no one would ever swipe for me," or something like that. I can't remember at what point we went to legal on base and got information to file for divorce. I'd never seen him cry before, besides one other time after we got married. At the airport, he cried so hard and he wouldn't let me see, just hugged me and buried my face in his chest so I wouldn't see. He said he didn't want to leave, but he cried constantly after I told him this was it and that I had an appointment and paperwork filled out to file for divorce. I'd never seen him like this before, constantly saying he was sorry, deleting every social media account he'd ever owned, crying at the drop of a pin, saying things like he will never marry again. He said I could have everything in our savings. He'd pay for me to finish college if that's what I wanted. I relented and we went to marriage counseling. He stepped up a lot. He was never on his phone anymore, would keep his phone unlocked and face up on the table, told me I could go through it anytime I asked, promised to stop watching porn. He even started cleaning the house and making dinner before I got home from work. He stopped drinking with his friends. It was a complete 180. For a while, the issues started to arise when every little thing would trigger a panic attack. He couldn't hang out with his friends without me freaking out. He began drinking with his friends again maybe a few weeks later. One night, he wasn't home by the time he told me he would be and I just broke. I ended up in the hospital and it was just the start of this toxic cycle. He would do something that would trigger me, whether it be drinking with his friends or the occasional YouTube short I would see in his watch history of a half-naked woman with her tits out and bouncing up and down. I would scream at him and berate him and degrade him because I wanted him to feel exactly how I felt. I think marriage counseling eventually helped a lot. After the hospital, I finally got my own therapist. She was my best friend. I still text her to this day. I didn't have any friends where we lived. He worked with his friends every day, and every weekend they would all party. I didn't have anyone. My friends and family were back home. I'm shy and have really bad social anxiety, and I've always had trouble making friends because I can't seem to ever open my mouth when there's more than 3 people in the room. Whenever he would leave to go anywhere, I felt so alone. I think at 22 our marriage really started improving again. We went on vacation together and were able to work through a lot of issues, and we were able to communicate things we were feeling, and it was amazing. We both felt so hurt, and we were able to find happy mediums on issues and relay boundaries that each of us respected. I was 23 when I moved home a few months before his contract ended. He tied up his loose ends on the house and work, and he moved back home with me. He tried working a night shift blue-collar job making good money, even more than he made in the military, but he hated it. He hated everything about it. He missed his friends and his job. His friends were his family. This was the first time I'd ever seen him truly depressed. 5 months later, he joined a different branch of the military. I didn't want him to. I wanted him to stay and have a normal life with me. I wanted to work normal jobs and have a family. He doesn't. He said he doesn't even want a family. I had started nursing school, and my best friend, whom I hardly ever got to see, had a baby. I finally had a group of friends and family I was able to hang out with every week. He left and got stationed in a different state, but only about 600 miles away this time, far but drivable. He came home for a visit after only a week of being there. We were doing good at this point, texting and calling a lot. A little over a month ago, he left to go across the country for a week exercise in the desert. He didn't have his phone for most of it, but he was able to text me once over a week ago. He didn't text again after that until I messaged him letting him know that a pet of mine had died. He replied immediately. I've realized that he has had his phone but just hasn't been talking to me. Yesterday he texted me in the morning letting me know that he was going to spend an upcoming holiday with an old military friend from his previous branch. And then the holiday after that he wanted to go see his extended family in a different state. We've talked a lot since then, not about anything good. I've asked why he's pushing me away, and he said he's focusing on his goals. I said I felt like I was being put on the back burner until he was ready to acknowledge me in our marriage, and I tried to tell him he didn't have to be alone and that I would support him. He said, "You can't though. You say you can, but you didn't support college or the CIA, so I kind of felt I should just do this alone and get rid of some of the negativity." And I realized he was right. He brought up college when we were about 21, maybe 22, and I actually scoffed at him because I didn't realize he was being serious. I didn't believe he could do something like that. He barely graduated high school. He went to 4 different high schools total, never getting above a 1.5 GPA. I tried doing his homework to keep him afloat, but he didn't care. I even got him enrolled in the same online academy that I attended due to public school not fitting around my athletic schedule, and I had to do every class and every assignment for him because he would never do them. He ended up graduating from what you would call an alternative high school. After telling me he wanted to go to college, he then told me he was going to join the CIA. This was just unfathomable to me. I didn't know what to do because he wanted my support, but I also didn't want to lie to him and tell him I believed in him. I guess I still don't, and I feel awful, and I can't imagine the feeling of your spouse not supporting you unconditionally. I don't know how to support him in something I just don't think he can do. And now we're here. Neither of us want a divorce. Both of us know our relationship hasn't been the best. We both don't know what to do. I would feel so lost and empty without him. I've known him for more than half of my life. Our personalities are formed around each other. We talk the same. We have the same mannerisms. We experienced growing up together and becoming adults together. I just want to add that these experiences I've listed were the worst times. We've had amazing experiences together. We have so much fun together. He makes me laugh more than anyone else can. He knows everything about me and has been there for every important moment in my life. I'm absolutely terrified of the future. I'm scared to tell my family if we get a divorce. I don't want to be another statistic. I know we got married young. I know we are a military family. I know that most of these marriages end in divorce, but I really thought we were different. I don't want to start over. I'm almost 24 and I know that's still considered young, but I've known him for 14 years. I thought we would have started thinking about having a family together by now. He just wants to focus on his career and says he doesn't think he even wants a family. I don't know what to do anymore. If you're still here, thanks for reading. I apologize if I'm all over the place. I haven't ever shared all this with anyone. I'm embarrassed of my situation and feel at a loss at what to do anymore. I'm really nervous to read any replies because I think I know what they're all going to say. Update 1. September 29, 2023. After over 1,000 people castigating me in the comments section, I wanted to sort of give an update and answer a few questions. First off, yes, I can in fact type like a mother effer. I had every intention of creating this post with anonymity, which obviously went down the drain as soon as I started typing. I didn't think this would get more than a couple thousand views and a handful of comments. I typed out every ignominious detail because I needed to see for myself everything in one spot. Someone said I must be exhausting to be around if I tell my friends and family all this. Well, you'll be happy to know that no one knows. I have never told any of my friends and family even a percentage of what has happened. That's why I ended up writing an epic. I wanted someone to know everything and tell me what to do because my brain has become this convoluted, rose-colored type of convoluted mess of, I don't even know. I have made my husband out to be the strong, loving, endearing, charismatic provider, and I know why. I've spent my entire life wanting to be the best at everything. My dad's favorite thing he used to say to me every day after practice was, "Second place is just the first loser," and I held on to that. I was the best. I was the best at school. I ranked number 1 out of my high school class of over 700 people. I have hundreds of medals and trophies. I did take second place at nationals one year, even though that doesn't feel like an accomplishment to me. I know it should be, but after dropping out of college and leaving behind a full-ride athletic and academic scholarship, I wanted it to be worth something. I never told anyone I left because I hated it and couldn't deal with it. I told everyone I got married and he joined the Marine Corps and I wanted to support him. I didn't want anyone to realize that I couldn't hack it. I wanted it to be worth it, and if I had marriage problems or if I got divorced, it would have just been for nothing. I would have lost again, and I can't lose. I grew up hiding in my closet hearing my dad scream at the top of his lungs and my older siblings because they averaged C's and D's in school. I knew what losing would get you and I would not lose. My mom cheated on my dad when I was a kid. I remember waking up one morning to them screaming on the front lawn. My mom trying to get into her car to go to work and my dad grabbed her arm and ripped her out of the car. They don't know that I saw that. They worked through it, if that's what you want to call it. I thought that was what you were supposed to do. I thought that marriage was supposed to be hard and you were supposed to put every ounce of yourself into fixing your ups and downs. Many have asked if I want to live the rest of my life like this. Of course I don't. Who the hell would want that? Why did I stay even after the first time? Well, starving people will eat anything. I have actually read every single comment, even the hurtful ones. Goddamn, you guys are a-holes and I needed it. I needed over 1,000 people telling me I'm a blind idiot to realize that marriage isn't supposed to be like this and that I deserve better. Because I do. I do deserve better. And for all those saying I'm not going to leave because I haven't yet, I will prove you wrong. I'm not going back anymore. I'm not going to settle. I had heard the phrase, sunk cost fallacy, but I didn't know what it meant. I do now. Thank you to everyone, even the ones who believe this post was a creative writing assignment. It gave me a laugh realizing that my life and my marriage has been so bad that it's unbelievable. Update 2. August 2nd, 2024. Hi everyone. It's been almost a year. I can't believe it's been almost an entire year. I don't think I've ever made an update like this before, so hopefully I do it right and it's not removed. I meant to update sooner, I really did, but I have been busy living my life to the fullest extent possible. I can honestly say I didn't even think it was possible to enjoy life this much. I have never experienced happiness like this. I'm honestly having a hard time putting it into words how amazing my life has become. I filed for divorce probably within 48 hours of making that post. Papers were signed a month later. Divorce was finalized 2 months after that. It was completely uncontested. We shared no assets, no children, thank God. It was actually a lot easier than I expected it to be. Honestly, the hardest part was telling my family, especially my mom. Everyone loved him so much because I unfortunately made him out to be so perfect. It was pretty much a slap to the face for her to find out. I felt awful. She cried for days, but she was so supportive of me. Everyone was so damn supportive of me. I turned 25 soon. I decided to get my nurse practitioner's license, so that's the track I'm on right now. I've made an incredible amount of friends this year. If I'm not working, I'm out having fun. I'm always doing something fun every day. I'll try to reply to any comments, but I'm so busy these days. Smiley face. I have truly begun to find myself, and I'm awesome. I am capable of so much, and I am brave. I am so brave. I did make one special friend from my original post, Bethany 2030. Thanks to you and my best friend Katie. If you guys are reading this, thank you for keeping me accountable and loving me unconditionally. I really didn't realize what a horrendous situation I was in. At least not until after I made that initial post and received so many eye-opening comments. Lots of people were right though. I did already know the answer to my question. It's actually kind of weird thinking about it. It doesn't even feel real. Whenever I try to think about my life over the last couple of years, I can hardly remember anything. It's almost like I'm trying to recall a story that someone else told me. Anything that I do remember, I recall almost like I was a spectator or an invisible third person in the room, and I just think, this poor girl and what she's going through. I can't even imagine how awful. It just doesn't even feel like it was me. My real life started as soon as he was gone. We don't speak anymore. We haven't really spoken much since December. One of the last interactions we had, he was upset about the divorce and regretted it, and then he proceeded to threaten that he would murder anybody that I dated in the future. Yes, it's documented to the best of my ability. I don't think he would ever actually do anything like that. He hasn't even been back in the state this year. I think he's too busy. Last I heard through the grapevine, he got drunk, had a one-night stand, and got some girl pregnant. She wants to keep the baby. He doesn't. I think she even took a brick to his car and smashed the shit out of it. If I could give him one last piece of advice, it would be to start a savings account for this poor kid's future therapy bills, and to ask him if he ever realized that almost all of his monumental life mistakes have been committed under the influence of alcohol. But alas, it isn't my problem. He will never hear from me again, and I can say that with complete happiness and confidence. To everyone who said I wouldn't do it and that I wasn't capable of leaving, you were wrong, and thank you. I did. I did leave. I didn't walk, I ran. I sprinted and I didn't look back. Thank you for helping me save my life. Now on to the next story. Story 5. Became a photographer against my parents' wishes, so they disowned me. My cousin revealed I made 6 figures at her party. Now they want $100,000 in reparations and are crying about it. Hi, so I, 28 female, have been working as a fashion photographer for the past 6 years now. Photography was something that I was always passionate about, so I decided to skip college and apply for internships with other well-known photographers, and I landed one right after high school. My first internship was not with a hugely accomplished photographer, and hardly anybody knew him in the business, but I was happy to be working with him nevertheless. Slowly, I started assisting other photographers, watching their work, and the more time that I would spend on shoots, the more I would learn and get confident about my work. Finally, at 22, I got my first solo shoot, and since then, I've never looked back. I've been doing pretty well for myself, and in the last few years, I've consistently made 6 figures every year, so that's a huge accomplishment. But unfortunately, my family has no idea of my accomplishments and still thinks that I'm good for nothing as a photographer. My job is quite literally just behind the scenes, and we are obviously not as well known as the models we work with. The people in the industry know us, but unless we are extremely popular, most other people don't bother to learn our names, and I don't think I'm at that stage yet. That is probably why every time I go home, my parents make it a point to remind me that my brother is a lot more successful than me at his young age, and that I should do something more respectable instead of wasting my time and energy on photography. My parents had never been happy with me, and for them, my brother had always been the genius of the family. My brother is 2 years younger than me, and when we were in school, he was always better academically and used to be a straight-A student. I, on the other hand, was more interested in stuff like singing, theater, and even sports, but studying had just never really been my thing, so I was a pretty average student. My parents constantly compared me to my brother, who was younger than me but was still doing so much better, and how I should try to live up to the standard he had set. It was just constant, and I used to get into a lot of fights with them over this until I realized there was no point. They would never appreciate me, so I started ignoring them. My relationship with my parents had always been strained at best. But then, after high school, when I decided that I was not going to go to college and was going to try my hand at fashion photography, my parents just lost it. We fought about this for months, and finally, they told me that if I decided to do this with my life instead of getting a college degree, they would never forgive me and would have nothing to do with me. I did not let that stop me though, because I knew that my relationship with my parents was not my priority at the time. I wanted to be a fashion photographer, and that's what I did with my life. For a few years, they were really upset with me and did not even speak to me, so that was quite difficult for me since I was really quite young, and so I had to rely on other members of my family for help. The help that I needed was mostly financial, since before that, I had only ever worked part-time jobs over the summer and stuff, and that's all the money that I had, which was way too little to afford to live on my own in a new city. Since I was an intern back then, I didn't get paid much either, so I desperately needed people to help me out. Thankfully, my aunt, my dad's older sister, would often send me whatever I needed to cover my expenses. Her daughter and I have always been great friends growing up, and naturally, she has always had a soft spot for me. But even then, I would still feel quite lonely sometimes since I didn't have the support of my family, and my parents and my brother had started to act like I never even existed after I left home. My aunt never told my father that she had been helping me out with money because then that would lead to arguments between them, since he would definitely accuse her of trying to encourage me to do the wrong thing. But my aunt would keep me updated on how my parents felt about my decision because every time she would meet them, she would talk to them about me, and most of the time their reactions were still negative, and they would quickly change the topic, which was quite disheartening for me to hear. But then, one year, all of a sudden, they just insisted that I come back home for the holidays so we could reconnect, and I ended up going back home that year to give our relationship a second chance. I had expected some really emotional reunion, but they were pretty normal about the entire situation. Later on, my mother told me that they had decided to reach out to me because it was pretty clear that I was not going to change my mind and they did not want to be perceived as the kind of parents who did not support their children's dreams and ambitions because that would look bad. So I realized that they had only reached back out to me because they wanted to preserve their reputation instead of looking like bad parents, not because they had come to accept my decision. I was really disappointed, but I decided to stay in touch with them because I believed that eventually I could get them to change their minds about me. I've kept them in the loop about all my achievements and accomplishments in the past couple of years, but even then, it's never felt like they are as proud of me as they are of my brother. My brother graduated with a business degree, and then he started working with a friend of my dad's. He makes pretty good money too, and my parents are constantly bragging about how my brother started supporting them financially as soon as he started earning. It's not like I hadn't offered to help them out financially myself, but they were the ones who refused to accept my help because of my unconventional career, telling me that they wouldn't feel comfortable taking money from me because they were not sure if I would be able to lead a comfortable life without it myself. I knew for a fact that this was not coming from a place of concern. This was just them trying to remind me once again that they would rather count on my brother than on me because they did not think that I was doing well enough for myself, and no matter what I did, I was just never going to be good enough for them. Even when I tried to tell them that I would be just fine and I could support them, they refused to believe me and chose to rely on my brother instead. And it wasn't even like they could do without the help. In the past couple of years after the pandemic, they had been struggling to stay afloat financially because the cafe that my parents ran had not been doing well. They had already lost a lot of money during the pandemic, and about 2 years ago they had to shut down and retire early, so that's when my brother started supporting them. They refused to take my help, and it was really insulting. So after that, I did not even insist on keeping in touch with them anymore. We would only meet each other at family events, and there I would be as civil as possible, but that was it. I stopped going back home for the holidays as well because I knew that even if I did, they would not appreciate me. They would just use it as an opportunity to berate me and make fun of me, and I didn't need that sort of negativity in my life anymore. I was just done. My relationship with them has gotten significantly worse since then, and nowadays we hardly even speak to each other. Very few people from the family know about my feelings on this because I don't like talking about it, and one of them happens to be my cousin, who recently got engaged. She hosted an engagement party a couple of days ago, and of course my family was invited and so was I, but I wasn't able to attend because I had the flu, and there, in my absence, my cousin had a conversation with my parents that made them call me up after many years. Before I talk about what happened on the phone call with my parents, I have to talk about what my cousin told me. After the conversation with my parents, I immediately called my cousin up to speak to her about it, and she told me that at the engagement party, my parents had been bragging about how my brother had received a huge promotion at work and now he would be making almost double the money that he had been making earlier. I don't know if that's true or if they were just exaggerating, but my cousin told me that it was getting on her nerves because not only were they making that entire party about themselves, but they were also totally ignoring the fact that they had another kid who was doing just as well in her life, if not better. She knew that no matter how much I pretended that my relationship with my parents did not affect me, it obviously did. I wanted to make them proud of me, and even though I had achieved so much, it felt like I could never do enough, and that was very upsetting for me. She knew that, so she decided that she was going to put my parents in their place and take a stand for me. And while they were bragging about my brother, my cousin decided to bring up how great it was that now they had 2 kids who were making 6 figures a year. Obviously, my parents were pretty shocked at that because in the past couple of years they had not bothered to keep in touch with me, and I had never told them about how much money I made because I did not think that was necessary anyway. After dropping that bombshell on them, my cousin didn't add anything to it, and later on, the very next day, my parents decided to call me up to ask about it. Of course, when they called me, I was quite surprised, and then when they asked me if I actually did make 6 figures a year and if I had been making that kind of money for the past couple of years, I decided to tell them the truth because I thought that they were finally calling since now they wanted to congratulate me and tell me how proud they were of me. That was pretty stupid and delusional of me because as soon as I said that, they told me that they couldn't believe that they had been pressuring my brother to help them out financially for the past few years, especially when I had already been doing so well for myself. They had the audacity to get upset with me and tell me that I should have told them how much money I was making so that they could make an informed choice about which kid of theirs should be helping them out financially. I was actually speechless because that was not the reaction that I had been expecting, even though in hindsight, that's exactly the reaction I should have been expecting. And if you guys are not shocked at the audacity yet, let me just tell you guys what happened after that. So when I did not say anything, my parents started to tell me that they had put a lot of pressure on my brother so far, and he hadn't been able to save enough money for himself and his future because he had been busy supporting his parents. That was not the case with me, and now they wanted me to pay $100,000 as reparations since they were my parents too, and I needed to share my brother's responsibility as well. They made it sound like I had never even offered to help them out, as if I had been evading responsibility so far, whereas it had actually been them who had snubbed me in the beginning. I thought about the situation, and I literally just burst out laughing at them before I hung up. I really couldn't think of any other reaction apart from laughing because it was so ridiculous to think that they were actually expecting me to agree to their terms. After that, I spoke to my cousin, got to find out the truth, and since then, I have actively been avoiding them. I already blocked them after the phone call, but then they started texting me from a burner phone, and I blocked that as well. All their messages just say that it was not cool of me to hide how much I had been earning, and if they had known about it in the beginning, they never would have asked my brother to help and would have accepted my help instead. My brother, who generally stays out of these things, recently texted me as well and told me that he doesn't want to take sides, but my parents do have a point. He told me that he also believes that so far our parents have been treating me unfairly and they should have been more supportive of me, but he also believes that if I really wanted my parents to accept my help initially when I had offered to take care of their finances, I should have specified exactly how much I make instead of letting them wonder because it's true that this is not a career that they know much about. They couldn't have known that I'm doing this well for myself. The other thing that he said was that so far it was just he who had been helping our parents out, but it was true that it was my responsibility as well because whether I like to admit it or not, they were my parents and they had raised me, so I owed it to them. Now I'm confused about a couple of things because of whatever he said. I obviously don't feel bad for my parents at all, but I do feel bad for my brother because so far we haven't had a great relationship, but it hasn't been as bad as our parents and I hate to think about it, but he might have a point. Edit. So since there is some curiosity regarding the reason why I never specified to my parents how much money I make while offering to help them out, or even why I never told them about it, just let them know how well I was doing for myself. The reason is pretty simple. First and foremost, I really don't like talking about how much money I make. If I'm telling somebody that I make a decent amount of money and I can help them out if they need it, I want them to trust me, especially if it's my parents, because why would I lie to them about having enough money to help them out financially? And I know a lot of people measure success by how much money they have made, but I really don't do that to myself. I am just as successful now as I was when I first started out because back then I had been successful and going after my dreams against all the odds, and even now I'm doing well for myself. So the definition of success for me is not money, and I wanted my parents to be proud of me because I was successful and happy with what I was doing, not just because I was rich. I don't know how to explain it well, but I just don't think that being rich and being successful can be used interchangeably, at least not for me. Besides, it didn't even occur to me that I would need to specify exactly how much money I made to my parents in order to win them over. I guess I've always been a bit delusional about them. I thought that they would treat me just like they treated my brother at some point, but that never ended up happening, and that's why we're all here right now anyway. Since you guys wanted a reason as to why I never told my parents about my exact income, this was why. I did speak about it with my cousin before any of this, and she told me that I shouldn't have had to tell my parents how much money I make for them to treat me like their child, and I didn't do anything wrong. So that was a huge relief for me because at least somebody is on my side here, and I also know for a fact that my aunt is also in agreement with my cousin. But then it's just the fact that my brother had been neutral so far, and now all of a sudden even he is against me, so that's what's actually bugging me right now. But I still haven't made up my mind about whether I should feel sorry about it or not. So I'm still open to any advice that you guys have for me. Update 1. Hi. Thank you for all the comments. Going through them was a real eye-opener for me, and I guess I really needed that because I had actually begun to consider that maybe I was wrong here, but I don't think I am anymore. I blocked my brother as well because I realized that even though he had been neutral so far, that hadn't helped me at all. Even though he had never stood up for me, my cousin had, my aunt had, and truthfully speaking, the only reason he is standing with my parents right now is because my parents have never given him a reason to stand against them, but I have several, that's for sure. Before I blocked him, I replied to him and told him that I really appreciated the fact that he was going out of his way to defend our parents, but he did not grow up in the same home. The parents that he knows are very different from the parents that I know, and he will never be able to realize what I have been through. So it's really, really unfair of him to say that whether I like it or not, my parents have raised me and I owe it to them to help them out right now. I absolutely don't owe it to them because whatever they did for me before I turned 18 was required of them by the law, so it's not like they were doing me some huge favor by taking care of me. And as soon as I was not a minor anymore, I ended up leaving home to fulfill my dreams, and after that, they didn't even speak to me for the next couple of years, let alone support me. At the time, it was just my aunt who had been there for me. Even my brother hadn't been there for me. It had been my cousin who had been supporting me emotionally throughout, so I can hardly even call them my family because at any stage of my life they have never even been there for me. If I actually did owe anything to anyone, it would be my aunt. As for the fact that he has been supporting our parents on his own for the past couple of years, that's really not my fault because it's not like I hadn't offered, but then they had snubbed me, and I remembered it because that's what made me cut them out of my life. And so far, they did not seem any worse off for it either. But all of a sudden, now that they know how much I make, they want me to make it up to them even though they haven't even apologized to me. That's really unfair and entitled of them, and I don't feel the need to put up with it. After sending that message, I did not think that I wanted to speak to them anymore, so I blocked him. Since then, I haven't received any message from them personally, but my aunt did contact me and told me that in that message. Since I had mentioned that my aunt had been there for me when my parents hadn't, my brother probably passed that message on to my father, and that's how he found out that my aunt had been supporting me in the beginning. And just as we had expected, he lost his mind over it and has been accusing my aunt of leading me astray. He believes that if my aunt had never supported me and told me to go back to my parents and live by their rules, I never would have gone so far away from them in the first place, and our relationship would be much better. I literally do not understand why they would think like this because, realistically speaking, if my aunt hadn't helped me out, I still would have found some other way to pursue my dreams, but I wouldn't have given up on them. And if I hadn't been able to become a photographer, I wouldn't have been making so much money and doing so well for myself at a job that I love. Then I would always resent my parents for never letting me do what I want with my life, and I don't understand why they would think that would improve our relationship. I think that it would make it much worse, but I guess they just need a scapegoat to blame at this point, and that's my aunt right now. They have been messaging her nonstop and have been telling her that if she had been a good sister, she would have told me to go back to my parents instead of encouraging my behavior, and she is the reason I am acting like this right now because my bad behavior has apparently always been rewarded. They have even dragged my cousin into this and said that it's not surprising that my aunt's own daughter has turned out to be so rude and classless since she clearly cannot be trusted with raising children. all because of the way that my cousin called them out at her party. Basically, my parents are insane right now, and even though my aunt has blocked them, she's sure that they're not going to let this go because they just want to create a huge deal out of this and pretend to be the victims in a situation that they themselves are responsible for creating. And even after all of this, if my brother still thinks that it's appropriate for him to be standing by our parents, then I really have nothing to say to him. I guess I should have seen it coming because even though he had never treated me badly himself, he never stood up against it either, so maybe it's not that surprising anyway. Update 2. Hi, so it's been 2 weeks since my last update and I don't know why, but my parents decided to go public with this drama. I really don't understand what they are hoping to achieve with it, but in the past couple of days they have made several posts against me and my aunt, and they've been pushing this one-sided narrative that apparently my aunt had encouraged me to pursue photography even though it was an unstable career, and they did not want that for me. Later, they tried to make amends with me, but I was the one who pushed them away, and when they asked me to help them out with money recently, I did offer to help, but I made it sound like I did not make enough money, and so they ended up relying on my brother so they would end up affecting my financial stability. Only recently did they find out the entire truth, and even now I'm refusing to help them out and putting all the pressure on my brother instead. It's just one-sided, and most of it is not even true, but neither my aunt nor I want to engage with them on social media, so we've been trying to text them in person and get them to take it down, and I've even told them that I'd take this up with a lawyer if they don't do as I say. But I guess they can tell that I'm bluffing because obviously nobody's going to waste their resources on taking up something like this with a lawyer. It's not like this is affecting me in a big way, but it's a mild inconvenience. A lot of people have reached out to me to ask about it, people who I haven't spoken to in years, and I really don't like the fact that they are treating this like a spectacle, which is why I want my parents to take down their posts, because if they don't, I'm going to have to post my side of the story along with my aunt, and we don't want to have to do that. So far it has been completely ineffective, and I guess eventually we're going to have to post about it ourselves as well. My cousin thinks that we should go for it, but I'm tired of thinking about all the drama that's going to happen later. Anyway, we just got to do what we got to do now. Update 3. So it's been 2 days since my last update, and like I said, because we had no other option, my aunt and I ended up posting our side of the story. Not just our side, but actually the truth, since we didn't want people believing my parents. They haven't had anything to say about it so far, but we have received a lot of supportive comments. I guess the rest of the family hasn't been as clueless as I thought. A lot of them have actually taken note of the fact that my parents have always treated my brother better than me and have been a lot more openly proud of him. I'm really happy that I'm getting all the support because even though people have never said anything about it so far, at least I know that deep down all of them are on my side, and that feels nice. My parents haven't had anything to say about it so far, at least not personally, but my brother has emailed me and told me that what I'm doing is seriously messed up. He said that he had been trying to keep the situation with our parents under control and had apparently almost convinced them to take down their posts, but now they are refusing to do that because I posted my side. He said that he hadn't taken me as somebody who wanted to add fuel to the fire to create more drama, and he's right, I really didn't want to do that, but what other choice did I have? Besides, I also think I've been really unfair to me because it's our parents who started with this, not me. I'm just putting out the truth for everyone to know so that they don't end up hating me or my aunt unnecessarily. Maybe my parents would have thought about it before they went out of their way to create such a nuisance. Anyway, I don't think there's anything left for me to say to my brother anymore because he's clearly picked a side. As for my parents, I was never interested in speaking to them anyway, so if all of them decide to cut me out of their life entirely, it suits me. Update 4. Hello guys. So it's been quite a few months since my last update, and I recently went back home to attend my cousin's wedding. I was her maid of honor, which meant that I had to be there with her for almost 1 month leading up to the wedding so I could attend everything and fulfill maid of honor duties. She told me that my parents had not been invited, and neither had my brother, and it shouldn't have come as a surprise to them because obviously after what happened a couple of months back, they should have realized that my aunt and my cousin don't want anything to do with them. They hadn't even bothered to apologize to any of us after the incident, so I don't understand why they believed that they would be invited. Not only had they expected to be invited, but they were actually offended when they realized that they hadn't received an invitation and actually showed up at my aunt's house to yell at her. My dad was furious and told her that she couldn't just cut him out of her life over something so petty, and that's pretty ironic coming from a man who literally cut his daughter out of his life. Anyway, My aunt did not take any BS from him and instantly put him in his place. That day they had a huge fight, and now my parents are running their mouths off, talking about us to whoever will entertain them. But it's mostly just people who want to gossip, and I don't think anybody's going to take it seriously. I haven't heard from my brother, and it's sad that he's chosen to side with our parents. But well, that's his call to make. The wedding was beautiful and it all went smoothly. I even got to spend a lot of time with my aunt and my sister, so that was just the cherry on top. I'm back to work now, but I got a much-needed break, and it's good to know that my parents haven't changed a bit even in the past couple of months. Now on to the next story. Story 6. I found love again after my wife passed away. Then, I caught my best friend and my new girlfriend having fun in my kitchen. So I got him arrested while she was on vacation. My wife, Rachel, and I grew up in a largish town of close to 30,000 people. We knew each other at an early age, roughly 6 or 7. I can't specifically remember. We were practically inseparable. At 16, we started dating each other. When we turned 18, we moved away for work in a city just a few hours' drive away. By 20, we were married and had bought our first house. At 22, we discovered that she was pregnant with a boy. It was then disaster struck. About 5 weeks before she was due to go on maternity leave, a large shelving unit collapsed and crushed her. I was told that both her and our child were killed instantly. 2 of her colleagues had also been injured in the accident. One left paralyzed, the other losing his leg after it had to be amputated. The company she was working for, having an austerity-cutting measure, decided to continue using old shelving that had been written off as unsafe instead of replacing it. I still haven't quite forgiven those executives and management personnel that made that decision because they cut short the love of my life, as well as killing our unborn child. It wasn't long after I was told I had a choice on how to proceed with what her company called compensation, but I called it blood money. They wanted to settle out of court to avoid a lawsuit. I, on the other hand, was out for their blood. Just to clarify here, this is not the revenge. This is still backstory. Fortunately, due to the coverage that it got and involving several politicians, the case was settled quickly in court, roughly 3 years, in which the payout for all parties was close to 10 times the amount that they had initially offered. A lot of fines were given to them for breaches on work health and safety. Executives were sacked, others were jailed, etc. A story for another time, maybe when I feel comfortable sharing. In this time, I was still working my job in telecommunications. My mother, bless her soul, had moved in while all this was happening to help me. I think I would have fallen apart if she hadn't been as involved as she was. It was around this time I was offered a promotion, but it involved a lot of travel around the state. I made a request to have an office in my hometown's branch, as I wanted to not only take care of businesses in the state but in my hometown also, as there was no business representative located there, to which they agreed. After a few months, we settled into a routine of 1 to 2 weeks in the city office, 1 week in my hometown, and 1 to 2 weeks visiting the rest of the state. After a year, I decided to buy a house in my hometown, so I wasn't having to stay at my parents' place every week or so. That was home and that I could come and go as I pleased. This is important for later in the story. It is about 4 years later that our story begins. Sorry if the backstory was a bit long. I had just returned from one of my trips on Friday and was checking in some stuff at my office when Harry, the branch's managing director, walked in. We had grown up together also, but had gone to different schools. But since coming back, we had developed a very close friendship. He asked how things were and then asked me if I wanted to come to a house party that he was having that evening. Short notice and all, but I said yes. I felt like a few drinks with friends were in order. It was there that Harry introduced me to Catherine. She was a new hire at the branch where my hometown's office was located and was getting to know everyone. Being new in town, we hit it off immediately. As much of a cliché as it sounds, it was almost as if Rachel was in front of me instead of Catherine. I won't bore you too much with the details, but after 2 years of dating, we decided to take the next step and she moved into my hometown's house. Everything up to this point had been going really well. Catherine and my parents got along, and Rachel's parents also approved and were happy that someone could make me just as happy as Rachel had done. All was going well for close to a year when things began to change. Skype sessions were cut short suddenly. Neighbors would tell me about how a car, described to me like it was Harry's, was always seen parked in the back alley near my house whenever I was away. Some clothes that weren't mine were in my wardrobe. All signs pointed to her cheating, but she said that nothing was happening. She said that Harry would come over occasionally to discuss business, etc., but never stayed the night. I chalked it up to me being paranoid and continued on as if nothing was wrong, but there was always this feeling that something wasn't right. It was close to 6 months after that I discovered that she had been lying to me. I had just finished closing a rather large contract with a new company and negotiations had wrapped up earlier than I had anticipated. So, instead of sticking around for the next few days, I decided to pay for an early flight home and surprise everyone. Fast forward a few hours, and I drive into my hometown and down the alley behind my house so that I could get into the house without being seen and surprise Catherine. Some part of me was curious, however, as to whether this mystery car was there. Sure enough, there was a car that was blocking the back entrance gate. I was confused for a moment, wondering if it had just been a neglectful neighbor parking, only to realize that it was indeed Harry's car. If it hadn't been for the high hedge line that I had put in a few years back for privacy, I may have well driven past my own place. Pulling up behind his car, I got out and thought it was strange that he was there so late, as she claimed that he always had left by now. As I approached the back of the house, I saw something that made my stomach drop. In my kitchen, Catherine and Harry were going at it hammer and tongs. I froze. Time stopped. There was my close friend having sex on my kitchen bench with my girlfriend. I didn't know what to do. So many questions were running through my head. Was this real? Or was I dreaming? Why were they having sex in my house? Feeling defeated, I turned and left without them seeing me. I sat in my car for what felt like an eternity. I was crying hard, but the sadness quickly turned into anger, the same kind of anger I felt towards those that were responsible for Rachel's death. I wanted to hurt them badly. As a pacifist, I don't believe in violence. It was then I knew I was going to punish them and destroy their lives, and what better time to start than now. I moved my car back up the alley, far enough away from my driveway that I could still see Harry's car, and then walked back to the gate where I could see into the house and called her phone. They were still going for it when it rang. They both looked at the caller ID and did a double take when my name came up. I could see that she was considering answering it, and they let it ring out. After a few moments, they were back into it again, and I dialed once again. This time, she did answer. As she was answering, I hung up and made my way back to my car. As soon as I did, she called me back. She asked why I was calling as late as I was, and I told her that I was about 10 minutes from home and didn't want to scare her coming in. She obviously was shocked and acted happy that I was coming, and the call ended very quickly after. She said she was going to get up and get changed into something. I said bye and hung up. A few moments later, Harry came peeling through the gate and, still half naked, jumped into his car. He took off like a bat out of hell. I smiled a little, knowing the fear that both of them would be feeling from being so close to being caught. I waited a few moments before turning my car into the same place Harry had been moments earlier. The night was fairly uneventful afterwards, and it wasn't until after she was asleep that I got up and went to my office down the hall. Couldn't sleep. I needed to plan, and plan I did. The revenge. My mother always taught me to be a pacifist and to allow cosmic karma to take its course. But on this occasion, I decided that karma could use a helping hand. I decided to punish them separately but destroy both of them. I knew that Harry had a drug habit. Nothing major, but he kept it very private. I only knew about it accidentally after seeing some coke he'd left out in his place, but pretended I hadn't seen it when he had made attempts to cover it up. I began calling some of my more unsavory clientele and made a few discreet inquiries into obtaining some samples that they were willing to part with. A few days later, I had a decent enough stash for my plan to work. About a month later, I had friends, including Harry, around for a barbecue night. After making sure that I sufficiently liquored up Harry, I told him to stay the night and sleep it off. In the early hours of that morning, I took the drugs and an assortment of my personal belongings and placed them at various places around his car, with the biggest stash in his tire well, confident that he wouldn't find them over the few months as the rest of my plan took effect. I locked the car up and went inside to sleep. I also placed some more drugs and personal items in his house after driving him home because he was still too drunk to drive. A few days later, I staged a break-in by smashing the back pane of my back door into my kitchen and leaving it open before heading back to the city for a flight. I had several messages the moment I landed. One from my clearly panicked mom who had found the back door smashed open and had called the police. One from Catherine in tears, and one from the local police asking me to call. After returning all the calls, I informed the police I was away on business and that I would be back the following week to talk with them. While away, I got Catherine to stay with my parents until after I got back and asked my dad to organize one of the local security companies to install cameras and an alarm system after getting the go-ahead from the police as to not ruin the scene of the crime. After getting home, I did the usual "my God, I can't believe this has happened and why would anyone do this" routine. After doing a thorough check of everywhere, finding that the items I had taken were missing, and filing a police report, I had the security company's rep talk to Catherine and me through how the cameras and alarm system worked. Then came the question I had been waiting for. The question of what happens if we are doing some business and don't want it recorded. She acted a bit shy asking this question, but I knew exactly the reason she was asking. He assured us that this was a question he got asked a lot, and we were shown on the home computer how to stop the recording for certain cameras if we wanted to be doing things without it being recorded so that we could protect her modesty. As I was walking him out, I asked him if cameras were turned off, could a notification be sent out just as a security precaution. He came back in and helped me through how to set up email notifications and left shortly after. Fantastic. All I had to do was wait. At this stage, I approached for some help in relation to common law in my country. I needed to make sure that my upcoming plan could legally be done and that I would not be forced to pay out any money or equity to Catherine, as I didn't know if we were classified as a de facto couple or not. Being the sole benefactor of Rachel's estate, I didn't want to be left with any nasty surprises where Catherine could take any of the estate away from me. Shout out to those guys and gals there, as they helped me get in contact with a great lawyer who assured me, due to the fact that although we had been dating for close to 4 years, we had not been living together long enough to be classified as de facto, and because I was paying all the utilities on the property that she was living in and didn't pay rent, it showed that she had no legal standing to make a financial claim against me. Just to be sure, though, he drew up what I felt was a pretty ironclad document, just in case there was any legal trouble. The following week, my work had approached me and offered me a promotion to move back to the city and run the team that I was a part of, meaning I wouldn't need to travel as often and be in the one location. And due to the success of being located in my hometown, they were considering having 3 to 5 representatives spend 1 to 2 weeks in the larger surrounding towns, including my hometown, as a part of my team. I said yes and began the process of beginning my transfer, which would take about 6 weeks. Perfect. More than enough time to gather all my evidence. Upon getting back to my hometown the following week, I began to set in motion the rest of my plan. I asked Harry to approve 1 week's worth of vacation for Catherine for 2 weeks' time. I wanted to send her and a friend or two away on a retreat before I made the biggest decision of my life for a second time. He jumped up and gave me a huge hug, congratulating me on being prepared to take the leap again. I hugged him back tight, but not the way I think he imagined it at the time. He agreed and blocked out the week for me. I asked him not to say anything to anyone, as I wanted to make it as big a surprise as I could. I knew that it would spread like wildfire around the office regardless, but that was my plan. That night, I told Catherine that I had booked her and 2 friends to go to a tropical spa resort, all expenses paid for a week. No questions asked. Pick 2 friends and come back to the biggest surprise of her life. She screamed like a kid who had just been told that all the candy in the shop was hers to have. I then told her that the following week I was going to spend it in the city preparing for a large client, who was one of my biggest accounts and needed some people in my team to help, before flying out the following week. And I wouldn't be home until the Monday that she was leaving, so I wouldn't be able to see her, which seemed to disappoint her. But I told her it would be worth it when she returned. What I failed to tell her was that I had decided to take 2 weeks vacation on the other side of the country, mentally preparing myself for the storm that was about to erupt the moment she stepped foot on the plane, as well as enjoying my first stage of freedom. On Sunday, 2 weeks later, I flew back and began driving home. Once getting there, I'd done a quick pass by my house and, sure enough, Harry's car was there, like the first night I had caught them. I parked a little ways back and checked the cameras. Asleep in my bed. No surprise, honestly, as I had recorded them constantly do this over the 2 weeks I had been away. I then made my first call to the police. Blocking my caller ID, I told them that I was one of my neighbors and saw someone hanging around in their car in the alley behind my house, and occasionally passing something through windows to passing cars while also looking into my yard. I was concerned that they were dealing drugs and were going to break into someone's property. I gave them his license plate and description. They said they would have someone there in a few minutes, so I thanked them and hung up. I then called Catherine and told her I was about 10 minutes from home and that I knew she was flying out tomorrow but desperately wanted to surprise her. Looking back at the footage now, I laugh at the commotion that I am surprised I didn't hear. In a few short seconds, Harry was half-dressed and flying out the back door to his car. At that point, I couldn't have asked for a more perfect scene. As Harry was peeling away, one of the police cars rounded the corner behind me, saw Harry driving away fast, and gave chase. After pulling in, greeting an excited Catherine, and doing all the couple things, she fell asleep again. I, on the other hand, couldn't sleep a wink. The next day, her and her friends were bundled into a car. After they drove away, I had to wait a few hours, but I began to execute my plan. I called my friend who was a removalist and apologized for the late notice, but needed my place packed and moved on Friday. After agreeing on a time, I told him that he would need to take certain boxes to a storage facility, which he said wasn't an issue. Then, I began packing Catherine's belongings. Later that day, I got a call from the police for me to come and identify some property that they had apprehended from a suspect the previous night that fit the description of property I had reported stolen. I grinned to myself, happy that my plan for Harry had come to fruition, and replied that I would be there shortly to collect it. Of course, when I got there, some of the items were still unaccounted for, due to the fact that they must have still been in his house and they hadn't searched there yet. By this stage, the town was buzzing with news. Events in my hometown don't stay secret for long. Harry was disgraced and promptly fired for his possession of drugs and stolen property, and our respective bosses on behalf of the company had extended a formal apology towards me during the week. That night, I went to my parents' house and told both mine and Rachel's parents what had happened, omitting certain details, and that I was moving back to the city after being promoted, but Catherine wouldn't be a part of it. They were pretty upset initially that I hadn't let them know what was going on, but were happy that I was handling everything maturely and hadn't sunk to their level. Though they didn't agree with ghosting Catherine, after some drinks, laughs, and tears, I went home. On Friday afternoon, after a busy week of organizing cleaners for the following week, the real estate to put my house on the rental market, and various other tasks at my hometown's office, I packed some things into my car and drove to my parents' place and said goodbye before the drive. Before leaving, I went to Becky's house. Becky had been one of Rachel's closest friends growing up. She was the only other person who knew what was happening, minus the details about Harry. Without her help, I wouldn't have been able to organize everything as quickly as I had. I gave Becky a large manila folder with my gathered evidence of her cheating, as well as a letter and a few other legal documents from my attorney stating that she was ordered not to contact me and the details of how to access her belongings located at the storage unit I had rented out. After a quick goodbye, I left and drove back to the city. On Sunday, I woke up to several missed calls, voice messages, and text messages. Turns out Catherine had come home early after being alerted to something being afoot in town, only to find an empty house and a "for rent" sign out the front. Freaking out, she had gone to my parents, who closed the door on her the moment that they answered, forcing her to call everyone until she managed to somehow be contacted by Becky and told that she had a package for her. I was told that she didn't take too well to that, as I fully well knew at that point from the numerous angry texts and voice messages from her accusing me of setting up Harry, of being deceitful, etc. I was worried that she might show up at my front door, but nothing ever happened. 5 weeks later, after leaving and being promoted, I write this out for you, dear reader. Granted, it's long and it took a few rewrites to shorten it down from my initial 14 pages, double what the story is now, but I feel that most of what I said was important enough for the story. Edit 1. Obligatory thank you, and holy cow, this blew up. Thanks for gilding this account, even though it is a throwaway account that I have no intention of using in the future. I am still at work at the moment and will, after I finish, answer as many questions as I can and provide any other updates that come my way. Edit 2. So, I'm home now, and with the number of questions that are here, as well as other comments and messages I have received, I decided to take the time to answer questions and provide some clarity here to save responding to everyone. One of the questions I keep getting asked is what happened to Harry, why I was so hard coming down on him, and why I would incriminate myself, especially on the internet. After making some inquiries back home to some friends, the short answer is Harry is looking at a few months in prison, as it's his first offense, but he'll be out sooner. And I felt that it was necessary to the story. No one other than myself knew what I had planned to do with Harry, which is why I omitted quite a few crucial details that had the potential to truly identify me, as well as changing up some of the descriptive language about locations to potentially put this story anywhere in the world. Just for clarification, there was already more than enough evidence in his own home. I just provided the means for the police to further investigate his activity in his home. That being said, I don't regret doing what I did to him, as he knew both Rachel and I growing up and knew how hard it was for me to pick up my life after she died. For those also asking if I am worried about Harry finding out and pointing the authorities in my direction, I know that he doesn't use Reddit. I know Catherine has an account, but I haven't seen any recent activity to state that she has been on in some time. As for other Reddit users, who knows? Most of the people I am friends with on my main account may recognize this story if they come across it, but as for their browse preferences outside the subreddits that we frequent on, I can't say. As for Catherine, people have questioned why I didn't do more to her or why I stuck around for as long as I did. Honestly, I almost did kick her out after a few days, but I wanted to gather evidence and show proof of her cheating so that everyone she knew would know what she had done. She is a major socialite, her words, and I knew by exposing her it would kill her reputation. As for what happened to her, I've been told that she moved to another state just recently after being transferred. From the people I have spoken to today, she was put mainly on administrative duties before her transfer, as there was quite a bit of backlash after the rumor mill made its way around town. People have questioned the legality of what I did to her. Moving all her stuff out, sending her and some friends away, spending a good amount on the trip, etc. Morally, I can see that it's a pretty dick move to build up her expectations of what she thought was going to happen. This, combined with killing her status around town, was my ultimate goal. To have her experience what it was like to have everything fall around you. But from a legal standpoint, I had every right. In the time she had been living with me, she had never updated any of her personal information, driver's license, voting registration, etc., to reflect that she had moved into my house. I found out this information during the course of my preparation with my lawyer. After I spoke to her/legal, with no concrete proof on paper to show that she was residing there, and because we hadn't met the de facto status, I was able to do what I did with no threat of backlash. Finally, for those of you saying how my story is fake, that I am a karma farming sociopath, and pointing to my malicious compliance story also as proof, I will be honest and let you know that I will not try to change your minds on this. Everyone is entitled to their opinions on stories shared all over Reddit and opinions on those who share them. The story on the other subreddit, however, was to build karma, as my original post required me to build up enough before they would allow me to post, as they thought that I might have been a bot. That story, which I only edited in the basics of the conversation because I can't remember all of it, did in fact take place and made national news coverage shortly after. If I find the article, I will link it, as it was, or was at the time, close to one of the largest roaming bills our company had ever passed on to a customer. Now on to the next story. Story 7. Cheating ex-husband sent me photos of his engagement party to make me jealous. But then I spotted someone in the background and used it to accidentally ruin his life. About a year ago, my ex-husband, Sam, 32M, decided to leave me, 30F, for his younger coworker, with whom he had been having an affair for almost 8 months. At the time, we had been together for 4 years and married for 2. We were just a week away from celebrating our 2nd wedding anniversary when he told me that he couldn't do this anymore and that he had been cheating on me with Nikki, his coworker, for the past 8 months. A few weeks before that, the two of them had confessed that they loved each other and wanted to spend their future together. So he couldn't continue pretending to be happy with me and said that he was going to leave. I was completely blindsided by that because even though he had been acting a little strange in the months leading up to that, I just thought that he was stressed out because of work. Never in my life would I have imagined that he was cheating on me with a 23-year-old who had just started working with him. But after that, Everything started making sense. Why he had been acting a little off for the past few months and why he had been spending so much time at work. He had not actually been stressed from work. He had been stressed because of me and the efforts that it took to hide his affair from me. He had indeed been spending a lot of time at work too, but not because he was working overtime, but because of Nikki. After he told me the truth, I immediately asked him to get out of the house, and he left, presumably because he had already had a discussion with Nikki, since after that he started living with her. The divorce was rough because I was really angry, and I wanted to really mess him up. I don't think anyone can blame me for that because we had been together for 4 years at the time, and he knew that I had been cheated on earlier as well, so I had a lot of trust issues. But he had broken down my walls and got me to trust him only to break it once again. That had really shattered me, and I had been going through a rough patch at the time. Now I'm doing better though, thankfully. The divorce came through a few months ago, and I've been pretty happy about it because it was finalized on my terms. I got the house, got to keep the car, and I also walked away with a substantial amount of settlement. I wouldn't say that it helped in healing me or anything of the sort, but it brought me some peace knowing that at least I got something out of the divorce, and the fact that he was very upset about giving up the house was also something that brought me great joy. Anyway, for the past couple of months, I have only been trying to move on since I don't have to see him anymore, and neither do I have to interact with him. I had blocked him everywhere after I found out about his affair, and I also told my friends that I didn't want to hear about him. The only thing that I had known so far was that right after I had kicked him out, he had started living with Nikki, and they had probably been living together ever since. But that did not matter to me anymore. This week, we would have celebrated our 3rd marriage anniversary together if we had stayed together, and I had been feeling quite low on the day of our anniversary. He decided to make it worse by reaching out to me through email and sending me a bunch of photos of his engagement party, since he and Nikki had apparently gotten engaged recently. There was also a message along with it. I'll just paste it here. He said, "It's almost been a year since we broke up, and initially I was really sorry that I ended up cheating on you, but now I don't feel that way anymore. I think it was destiny that brought Nikki into my life, and you were just a placeholder. I know you could not have ever been my soulmate, even if you tried, because you are vindictive, mean, and heartless. I know that you were the one who turned all our friends against me by telling them that it was gross that I was dating a 23-year-old. As if that's illegal. We are in love, and I wish you could realize how wonderful of a feeling it is and how age doesn't matter when you're in love. You're closer to my age, and yet what Nikki and I share, you will never have that with anyone. Do you know why? It's because you're not worthy of it. You were the one who tried to make it look ugly when Nikki and I got together, and I will admit it was wrong of me to cheat, but the nasty ways that you chose to retaliate just makes me grateful that I decided to go along with Nikki, because she's the perfect woman and you'll never be her. I thank God every day that we got a divorce and I didn't have to end up with you. So you might have won the divorce and gotten away with your demands, but I won at life. I'm sharing a couple of photos from our engagement party. Hopefully, you'll see this and realize what true love looks like and find it in yourself to be able to move on. Happy anniversary. This is what he sent to me along with the photos of the engagement party, and it really boiled my blood when I read that message because he kept harping on about one thing. That I had turned our friends against him by making it seem gross that he was dating a 23-year-old while being literally almost a decade older than her. Let me just make it clear, I was not the one who turned our friends against him. Sam and I had known each other since we were in college, and we did have a common circle, but I kind of drifted apart from most of my friends after college since I had to move out of state for work 6 years ago. I finally came back and started working here, and that's how I ended up reconnecting with my old friends, and that included Sam, and we ended up spending more time together. When I returned, he and I had a very tight-knit group of friends, and they were all very supportive of our relationship. We were all very close until he cheated and I told our friends about it, because obviously why would I hide it? And I never said that it was gross of him to date Nikki when she was so much younger than him, even though I do believe that it was gross. But I didn't have to say anything to our friends to make them cut him off. They made that choice for themselves. Yet he has always believed that I was the one who forced them to pick and I manipulated them into picking me, and he still holds a grudge against me for that. However, even more than that, he didn't like the fact that I got the divorce to be finalized on my terms. So, all these reasons combined, I guess he just wanted to rub it in my face that he was getting engaged to the woman that he had cheated on me with, just so that I would feel bad. And, well, he had succeeded because I felt terrible, especially because of what he had said about how he had won at life, and the fact that he even wished me a happy anniversary. Showing off that he remembered that it was our anniversary and he was doing this on purpose. That was simply diabolical. I was actually about to delete the email because it was so upsetting, but before I did that, something in the photos caught my eye. In the background of some of the photos, I could see a very familiar person, and when I zoomed in, I realized that it happened to be one of my very distant relatives. This person, let's call him Jonathan, isn't exactly related to me by blood, but there's still some relation there, so I could use that to my advantage. To be more precise, he is married to my mother's third cousin, and we have occasionally seen and met each other at some family get-togethers. But since they're not very closely related, my mother isn't exactly friends with them, and neither are we. I've only seen him a couple of times, but I recognized him in the background of those pictures. I instantly sent those pictures to my mother and asked her to confirm if it was actually him. I explained the entire situation to her, and she decided to call her cousin and ask her what was going on. After the phone call, my mother and I were able to find out that Jonathan was attending that engagement party because he was about to invest in the business that Sam was starting. Sam had used his father's connections to get Jonathan on board since apparently my ex-father-in-law had been quite close to Jonathan's brother. Yeah, it's pretty complicated, but anyway, that's how they knew each other, and they had been in talks for a couple of months. Sam had invited Jonathan to the party so they could get to know each other better before he invested in his business. I requested my mother to pass on her cousin's contact information to me because I had a lot to talk to her about. I had mentioned earlier as well that my mother isn't exactly close to these people, so they had no idea about my life, and they definitely didn't know about my divorce from Sam and the other side of him. I hadn't actually been hoping to achieve anything because I didn't think that Jonathan would give up on a business opportunity just because a distant relative had been cheated by the guy that he was about to invest in. So I hadn't actually been hoping for anything when I reached out to my aunt and asked her to put me in touch with her husband because I had to talk to him about Sam. However, when I spoke to them, I realized that they were really warm and quite willing to hear me out. So I explained everything about my divorce to them, and then I even forwarded the email that Sam had sent to me, telling them that I felt like it was my duty to warn them about the kind of guy that they were dealing with because he was not a good person. And just as I had expected, both Jonathan and his wife were quite surprised because apparently Sam had been very sweet to them the entire time that they had been talking about investing in his business, and he had been quite charming and kind. That was not surprising for me because Sam actually was quite the charmer when he wanted to be. That's how he got me, and he's very good at pretending, which is how he was able to hide his affair for so long. Anyway, after I told them the truth about him, they told me that they were really thankful that I had reached out to them and they were going to think about what they wanted to do after this. Even then, I hadn't actually been expecting anything to happen. I just thought that I had the satisfaction of knowing that at least I had done something real and not just sat back and let things happen. Surprisingly though, today I received another email from my dear ex-husband, and the tone of this one was quite different from his last. Apparently, after speaking to me, Jonathan had decided to rescind his offer of investing in the business since that one conversation with me had completely changed his opinion of Sam. Jonathan had started to ghost him personally and had his secretary inform Sam that he was no longer interested in the business anymore and wished him the best, but he couldn't go further on with him going to special circumstances. After his talk with me, his secretary made sure to mention me so Sam would know exactly what's going on. Sam couldn't contact me in any other way, so he had to send me an email again and tell me that he was quite desperate because he had already quit his job and had started recruiting people for his business. Without Jonathan's investment, he would have to shut down and go back to working, and he just wasn't ready for that. He was practically begging me to make things right and even tried to bribe me by telling me that he was ready to make me a partner in his company only if I got Jonathan to come back on board, and he knew that I could do it. I was actually quite happy reading that email because it made me realize that he had really screwed things up for himself by sending me that horrible message and trying to rub it in my face. His plan had totally backfired, and now he was the one who was in a terrible position and needed me to bail him out. I was feeling like I was on top of the world and was relishing the experience until, out of nowhere, I started feeling guilty about what was happening. I don't even know why, but a couple of hours ago, I started feeling like I was a terrible person for doing this and that I'm no different from Sam if I'm actually relishing it. I've spoken to my parents about it. I've spoken to my friends as well, and all of them have told me that the only reason I'm feeling guilty is because I'm a decent human being, but that doesn't mean that what I did was wrong. But that's not helped me because I know that they are on my side, and they're going to be biased because they love me. I guess what I'm saying is that I need some unbiased people to validate my decision because I've just realized that I am literally ruining somebody's career right now, and I've been enjoying it so far, but that realization has made it a little less fun. It's complicated, but I really need somebody to put things into perspective for me right now, and I need it to be completely free of any bias. So, AITA for getting an investor to back out of my cheating ex-husband's business and ruining his career? Edit. I guess there has been some confusion about my statement regarding how it was gross for my ex-husband to be dating a 23-year-old. Yes, it's legal and I am aware of that, but that doesn't make it all fine all of a sudden. Just to put things into perspective, she has just graduated 2 years ago and has very little real-world experience. And when she started working with him, it was only her second job. Meanwhile, Sam has been working for the past 10 years, and even at this job, he was supposed to be her senior. So it's quite obvious that he has had a lot more experience than her, and the power dynamics between the two of them are obviously not going to be the same had it been a woman of his own age. And I'm sure that a lot of other people agree with what I'm saying because if everyone had thought that it was completely fine for them to be dating, they wouldn't have had to quit their jobs and start working elsewhere after the news of my divorce and their affair started spreading. So I know for a fact that Nikki is an adult and can make her own decisions, and I'm not judging her, not for that at least. But I think I'm allowed to judge my ex-husband who cheated on me with somebody so much younger than him. Anyway, it's my personal opinion that it was gross of him, and I'm going to stand by that. I think that he was taking advantage of her immaturity, and I think it's weird and unethical. But that's just me. People don't have to agree with me or anything. I'm fine with it. But there's no reason to be so hateful to me just because I called it a gross relationship. The man cheated on me. I think I've earned the right to criticize him. As for saying it to my friends, I had already mentioned in my original post that I did not say it to them. They were the ones who had been saying it, and I just agreed but didn't harp on about it. Neither did I tell my friends to cut them out of their lives because of this. That was their own choice as well. What I'm trying to say is that I have tried my best to deal with all of this as maturely as I possibly can because I don't want to indulge in any sort of drama. I just wanted to get out of that marriage as quickly as possible and get the divorce finalized. So I would really appreciate it if people did not hate on me in the comments because it's really not necessary, and I don't think it's fair either. Thank you to the ones who were kind enough to me and everyone else who was polite and civil. The rest of you guys, I don't know what's wrong with you people, but it's not okay to hate on other people like this. Update 1. I finally responded to the email that Sam had sent me, and I told him that I really appreciated his offer of wanting to make me a partner in his company, but I was just not interested. After all, he had cheated on me once. I didn't want to be cheated on once again. And I also told him that I had spoken to Jonathan, but I hadn't told him that he had to opt out of investing in the business. That had been completely Jonathan's personal choice. I had only warned him about Sam, and, well, it's not like he can blame me for that because he was the one who sent me those photos and that's how I found out about the connection. Anyway, I made it very clear to him that I hadn't told Jonathan not to invest in his business, and since I couldn't have influenced that decision, I don't think I can go up to him and tell him to invest in Sam since that's not my place either. Plus, even if I could, I'm not sure I would want to do that to anyone because I know him as a person and I know how petty and vindictive he is. So I don't think it's a good idea for anyone to be investing in his business right now. Had he been a changed person and not sent me that email at all, maybe none of this would have happened, but he is still a horrible human being, so he totally deserves this. I also told him that he needs to move on, not me, because I'm not the one still whining about the fact that our friends are not speaking to me anymore. That was also his own fault. He cheated on me, and that ruined his friendship with a lot of people because it was a horrible thing to do. But now, what's done is done. He could have just chosen to move on. But for some reason, he just keeps trying to find ways to blame me for all of this. In the email that I wrote back to him, I told him that the real villain in his life is him and not me. He is the one who keeps screwing up everything for himself, and then when he has nobody else to blame, he turns to me. I ended the email by telling him that he has a very sad existence and that I really hope things get better for him because right now I don't think he's winning at life at all. People who win at life don't feel the need to announce it to the people they don't like anymore. And then I blocked that email address so that he wouldn't be able to contact me again because that's the last thing that I need. Of course, he can always just make a new one and try to reach out to me, but we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. But for now, I'm just grateful that my family, no matter how distant they are from me, decided to take my side. So yesterday I called Jonathan up and I thanked him for not investing in Sam, and he went on to tell me that I was the one who had saved him from investing in somebody who was obviously not reliable or trustworthy. If he could cheat on me and then treat me like crap, then he's obviously not a good person and he wouldn't want to invest in somebody like that. He also told me that at the end of the day, we are family, even though we haven't interacted much, and blood is always thicker than water. So I was very grateful for that, and I even invited them over for dinner this weekend because this is a pretty big deal for me. I've also invited my parents so we can all bond, and I think an experience like this is going to bring us together even though we haven't been close before. And regarding everything that has happened with Sam, I've spoken to my friends about it, and they have told me that I really don't need to feel guilty about ruining his career. I had mentioned this in my original post as well towards the end, but I want to bring it up again because apparently there were certain things that I didn't know since my friends had wanted to protect my feelings, and so they hadn't spoken to me about it earlier. But apparently, while we were getting divorced, he had tried to do everything in his power to turn them against me and make me look like the villain so they would testify against me that would sway the divorce terms. He was pretty desperate, so he had tried to make it seem like I'd been the one who had driven him to cheat because I used to act like a psycho and apparently I was very insecure and petty. He had even tried to tell our friends that apparently I had anger issues and I would go out of my way to make life difficult for him. But nobody had bought any of that, and everyone has stayed by my side, which is probably why he is so upset. They hadn't told me about any of this in the past because they wanted to spare my feelings since I had been finding it very difficult to move on. And to be fair, even though I had told them that I didn't want to hear anything about him. However, after they told me about it, I started feeling a lot less guilty about screwing things up for him because I think he deserves it. Actually, let me just say it. I know he deserves it and I refuse to feel sorry for him anymore. Update 2. Hi. So it's been 2 weeks since I blocked Sam, and since then, I haven't had any contact with him. The dinner with Jonathan and my aunt was a success, and since my parents had come over for dinner as well, even my mother got to bond with her cousin. So it was pretty fun, and Jonathan told me that after finding out what had happened, even his brother had cut ties with my ex-father-in-law because I remember my in-laws had supported their son, which was obvious, but it was a good thing to do. I have been feeling quite content with my decision, and after what happened this evening, I am pretty sure that I did the right thing, because Nikki showed up at my house. I don't know how she found me, but anyway, that doesn't matter anymore. She showed up pretty late, just as I was about to heat up my dinner, and when I saw that it was her outside, I told her to go away because I didn't want anything to do with her. I think anyone in my place would have reacted the same way. But she didn't leave. Instead, she started throwing a tantrum on my doorstep and accused me of being a jealous loser. She told me that I just couldn't stand the fact that my ex-husband was happier with her instead of me, and that's why I had taken it upon myself to try and ruin their lives. She called me crazy and told me that there was no reason for me to keep tabs on his life just to try and ruin him. I realized that she probably had no idea I had even found out about Jonathan because if she had known about it, she would have known that I found out about Jonathan just because of what Sam had sent to me. So I told her about the email and I told her exactly what he had said to me, but she refused to believe me. So I told her that I would gladly send her the email if she wanted me to, and that's what she made me do. She stood outside the door and made me forward the email to her, and only then did she realize what was going on. After she got that, I'm pretty sure she started feeling like a fool and just walked away without saying anything else. Then I went back to my dinner, and a few minutes ago, right before I started typing out this update, she sent me an email saying that I was still a horrible human being for going out of my way to ruin my ex-husband's life and career. She called me miserable and petty and just reinforced my belief that I had done the right thing by exposing Sam. Anyway, I told her that she and her husband needed to leave me alone and stop acting like they were obsessed with me because right now I was just one more incident away from posting all of this on social media, and then everyone would know what kind of people they were. So that was that, and I'm finally going to start with my dinner now, and I really just hope that they have learned the lesson and they're going to leave me alone now. Update 3. Hey everyone. I have some pretty fantastic news to share with you guys. So it has been almost a month since my last update, and 3 days ago, I heard from a couple of my friends that Sam and Nikki had posted that they were breaking up their engagement and going their separate ways due to irreconcilable differences. I don't know why they used such corporate language just to announce their breakup, because it's not like they were getting divorced. But anyway, they also mentioned that they would continue to remain cordial and hope that people would give them the privacy they needed at this time. I don't know why they were talking about privacy at all because from what I've heard, Sam himself has been bad-mouthing Nikki to all his friends and has been talking crap about her relentlessly. My friend and I managed to read between the lines from all the gossip that we have heard about it, and we think that she decided to leave him a couple of weeks ago, probably after I told her about the email and stuff, and she decided that she couldn't be with somebody who was still reaching out to his ex on purpose, even if it was just to make me feel bad. I guess it was also bad that he had lied to her and didn't mention the email to her while talking about why the deal with Jonathan had fallen through. Sam's ego couldn't handle this, so he started bad-mouthing Nikki and told a bunch of his friends that she was only with him for the money and the stability because ever since he had moved in with her, he had been covering all their expenses and she barely had to spend $1 on anything. It was gross how he had switched up his attitude toward Nikki so quickly just because she was not willing to put up with him and his lies anymore. Anyway, I think it's fantastic news because right now neither does he have a job and his fiancée also left him, so he's pretty much at rock bottom. I don't feel bad for him at all because he deserves all of this. He brought it all on to himself. I'm doing a lot better, and I don't even care about him or what he's going through anymore. My work is great, I have my friends and family by my side, and that's pretty much all I need. So far, I had even been holding back on getting a cat because he's allergic, but I think it's about time that I got a cat as well. But even right now, I feel pretty fulfilled. Now on to the next story. Story 8. My sister's husband flirted with me at a family dinner. It was a test she planned because of her ex. Now my mom's spreading lies about me to our whole family, and I'm cutting them off. This is actually crazy, and there's going to be lots of details, so please bear with me. My sister recently got married. It's been about 3 to 4 months. I didn't really see much of them after the wedding, honeymoon, and then back to work. But once a month, our family all gets together, and my parents host a huge feast. Since this took place a week ago, it was for the month of August. During this dinner, my BIL brother-in-law was being extremely weird towards me. He was complimenting my body, ignoring my sister, and just straight up acting so strange. It was completely unexpected for several reasons. One being, his wife was sitting right next to me. 2, he has only been married a few months. Also, he's just never spoken to Slash about me like that before. I felt really uncomfortable, and I'm sure it transpired to the rest of the room because, WTF? Except it was weird because nobody was pointing anything out. I was extremely confused and just wanted to leave. I left early, but when I got home, I just felt so icky. I don't even know how to describe it. I decided to message my sister and let her know his behavior made me uncomfortable. I told her that it was also concerning he felt comfortable enough to say these things in front of my parents and brother. I explained that if she didn't feel comfortable being in the middle, I wouldn't mind explaining this to him myself. His behavior was so unnerving that I FaceTimed my boyfriend, who was away for work in the US. I told him it was weird and how suddenly my BIL's behavior towards me went from that of siblings to this horribly uncomfortable situation. He was pissed, rightfully so. My sister didn't respond to my text until the next day. She asked to meet up, so I did. I was expecting her to be upset and to have him apologize for what he said. Instead, she admits it was all a test and I passed. I was confused, to say the least. What did she mean by a test pass? Like, what's going on? Turns out she had her husband do those things on purpose because she wanted to see how I would react. If he had said those things to me and meant them, my reaction and choice to message her afterwards told her I could be trusted around him. I was offended, to say the least. Why would she think I couldn't be trusted? Well, let me tell you the, in my opinion, not very valid reason for this lack of trust. My sister has been married before. She was 27, and the divorce was about 10 months into the marriage. Her ex was a psycho, to say the least. He had known me longer than he did my sister. I was the one who had introduced them. They got along well and eventually started dating. It looked like the healthiest and most romantic relationship to grace planet Earth, except when they got married. During their marriage, I was staying with them because it was a closer commute to work. They had extra bedrooms and I would pay rent and cook and clean for myself. My underwear, bras, and panties would often go missing. It started off small. I just assumed it got mixed up in my sister's laundry and would turn up eventually. But it was happening more frequently, to the point I was buying underwear almost weekly. I kept pressuring my sister to admit she was stealing my underwear, and she was adamant it wasn't her. I decided to just ignore it and go about my day. Something I hadn't even considered an option was the real reason. My former BIL was stealing my underwear. I don't know, nor did I want to know, what he was doing with it when I found out, but I was so disgusted and confused. Someone I thought was my friend was actually just a perf. He admitted he had never really loved my sister and was just using her to get to me. I was just so creeped out, and I pressed charges against him for his sickening behavior. I was able to get a restraining order, and my sister divorced him almost instantly after finding out. She used something traumatic that happened to me and flipped it to make it seem like I'm the one who was untrustworthy. She claimed I must have strung him along for him to think like that, and this test was just to prove I wasn't doing it again. Safe to say, I was extremely hurt and angry by her response, so I told her to never speak or contact me again if that's what she really thought of me. My family found out and for the most part agreed her behavior is crazy. But my mother stood by her actions and said my sister was just trying to protect herself from being hurt again. I told her if she had just been honest with me from the start, I wouldn't have been as bothered. There's a right way to approach things and a wrong way. This isn't just wrong. It's also crazy. Why is she so adamant it's my life goal to hurt her? I didn't know that her ex was going to turn out like that, so why am I being punished? She claimed I should have had some indication he liked me, but he really made it seem like he was head over heels for my sister. How am I supposed to know what's going on in someone else's mind? Anyway, the family dinner was earlier for this month, as it was the most compatible date for everyone's schedules. Yesterday, I told my parents to expect me not to show up if my sister and BIL were going. It wasn't even because I refused to ever speak to her again. I had just said that because the situation was so fresh. I told my mother I would apologize when I had cooled down a little. It was just difficult to face them when they made me feel like a horrible person for a situation that was out of my control. My mother assured me my sister wouldn't attend, so I agreed to come. When I arrived, they were both there. Felt like an ambush, and it sort of was. My sister demanded I apologize for my reaction because it was my own fault it happened in the first place. I can't lie, I snapped. I told her she should remove my number and the title of being my sister if she really felt that way. I just need advice because therapy isn't scheduled for another 2 weeks, and I feel like I just dreamt a soap opera storyline. I feel kind of bad because I do understand my sister had her trust broken completely by her ex, but I feel like that distrust shouldn't be aimed at me, but the person who actually caused it. And I was the one who introduced her to the a-hole in the first place, so I feel guilty for that already. But I'm failing to see how her schemes to manipulate me into thinking she's being wronged by a husband once again is just far too extreme. 1, I want to apologize to her for one reason: ever introducing that man to her. 2, I really need her to see that I wasn't trying anything when her ex was stealing my underwear. I was just as in the dark as her. How do I go about doing the above because I want to put this behind me and move on? I was just about healing from her former marriage, and now this one is also putting me in a very uncomfortable position with my sister, my BIL, and my own mother. Any advice on how to tackle apologizing, getting my sister's trust back, and showing her I truly just want the best for her? Edit to add additional information provided by OOP regarding what my father and other family members were doing during the situation. My dad was not happy with what my brother-in-law, BIL, had said during the dinner back in August. When he found out about the whole plan, he actually forbade my BIL from entering our family home again. My mother, however, lied and claimed he wasn't invited, but they still showed up anyway. Apparently, my dad was furious and even threatened to call the police if they didn't leave. I wasn't there for all of this since I had already left after making my statement, but my brother later called me and filled me in on everything that happened after I left, both at the August dinner and this month's dinner. I really need to give credit to my brother and dad who have been amazing throughout all of this. They've been so supportive and have even tried talking some sense into my mother. Their words, not mine. I haven't spoken to her in a few days now, which is strange because I used to call her at least once a day. And as for my sister and her husband, I haven't talked to them at all. One thing I want to make clear: I have absolutely nothing to apologize for in this situation. What they did to me was completely wrong. It's so hurtful to know that my sister has this image of me as someone who would deliberately cause her misery. I miss the sister I used to have, the one who loved and trusted me more than anyone else. Update 1. A lot has happened the last couple of days. I have tried to read all the comments and taken everyone's advice. This has been the outcome. I lost a sister and a mother in 2 days. It's heartbreaking more than anything. I had a meet-up with everyone. My boyfriend came with me, so I had support during the conversation. Honestly, it was hard to look at any of them for the way they treated me. I'm so thankful to everyone opening my eyes to the crazy behavior exhibited in the first part of the story. In front of everyone, my mother admitted to knowing about the plans from the start. Sister confided in her, and she agreed it was a good idea. She supported her son-in-law openly harassing her daughter. I'm in complete shock, and it just hurts so much knowing she would condone this, considering she knew how much I was affected by the first husband. She knew I was having a difficult time in therapy. It took me a long time to trust people again after that, and I feel like once again my trust has been broken. I don't know how I'm ever going to trust anyone again. I'm really thankful my boyfriend was there to comfort me because it was so hard keeping my composure around them. My sister was not budging at all. She kept maintaining she was in the right. She said the only reason I wouldn't apologize is because deep down I knew what her ex was like. She said I just liked getting attention from him knowing he was married to my sister. She also claimed I overreacted, and if it's acting, then it's not harassment. I told her she shouldn't expect any calls/texts, or just not to be contacted by me until I received the apology I deserve from both her and my BIL. Speaking of, he was pretty silent throughout the whole thing, probably because my father threatened his life if he spoke bad about me. He did say that the only reason he did it was to placate my sister because she kept accusing him of ogling me, but still no apology from him. My mother, this one broke my heart the most. She told me I was over-exaggerating and that I should be happy to have passed my sister's test. She actually said the words, "We can all move on now." I was in complete a-hole, to be honest. How could she think that things would just go back to normal after this? I asked why she was supporting such delusional behavior. She said it was because she loved my sister and wanted her to be happy. I asked her if she loved me as much as my sister. She said yes. It seemed hesitant, but I don't want to read too much into that. I told her I wanted an apology for her schemes. She refused, so I gave her the same conditions I gave my sister and BIL. Until I get an apology, I simply am not speaking to all three of them. As a result, I also probably have to go low contact with my brother and dad because they both live with my mother. I mean, I'll hang out with them outside and without the presence of my mother, but if she'll let them is the question. I know some of you have suggested spending time with my boyfriend's family on holidays and occasions. I think it was just one person, but oh well. I haven't met my boyfriend's family before because they live in the US, but after this situation, I've taken 2 weeks paid holiday for the end of this month, and he's taking me to meet them for the first time. I hope it goes well because they might be the only family I have now. My therapy session has been moved to tomorrow because I requested an emergency appointment. Wish me luck. Anyway, my biggest thanks goes to all you Redditors for helping me see the situation for what it was, for your advice and compassion. I'm really grateful. I don't think I would have been able to get through this on my own. It's likely I would have caved and apologized just for the pattern to repeat itself. Truly, thank you so much. Wishing you all the best, and I hope you know that your advice might have just saved me from my need to always please others. I'll look back on this moment anytime I feel like putting someone else's feelings above my own comfort. Hope your hearts are filled with love and happiness. Edit to add additional information provided by OOP in response to some questions about my brother and father's thoughts on this situation. My brother is still living with my parents, so while he doesn't agree with what happened, he's been trying to stay out of my mother's way until he can move out. As for my dad, he wants nothing to do with my brother-in-law, BIL, anymore and has made it clear he doesn't want to be around him again. I'm not entirely sure how he feels about my mother's role in all of this or even my sister's, but during the meeting, he did express disappointment in my sister and even suggested she should divorce BIL and move back home. As for the extended family, I haven't mentioned anything to them, mostly because I'm honestly embarrassed to bring it up. So far, no one from my extended family has reached out, which makes me think that my mother and sister probably haven't said anything to them either. I appreciate all the support, and I know this trip to the States might not be the perfect solution, but it's something I'm looking forward to. At the same time, I do wonder if any future apologies will be sincere or if they'll just come because of external pressure like ultimatums. It's hard to know who to trust right now, but I'll take things one step at a time. Update 2, June 6, 2024. Posting this on my profile instead because a few people have requested an update. To be honest, there hasn't been much to update on in that particular situation. I am in contact with my mom now since the incident because she apologized. My sister and I still do not speak. From what I know, she is still married to my BIL, and I think they're expecting something. I inferred from family friend's Facebook post. I am doing a lot better though. I've become closer with my dad and brother throughout everything. My relationship with my mother is more strained now. I feel like I still can't trust her even though she apologized. I don't think we will ever be as close as we were before my sister's schemes. My relationship is going really well too. He was asking about rings, so I'm thinking a proposal might be in my future. Also, his parents are just the best. They've sort of taken me in, and it's so cute how they dote on me like I'm their daughter. His whole family is just incredibly supportive and uplifting. We're going to visit them again in July. I'm so excited to go back. I love it in the US. The weather is better, the people are nicer, and of course I get to see where my man grew up. I just feel so much lighter and happier now that I've put what my ex-BIL and current BIL have put me through behind me. I wish her the best with her pregnancy, but that's all I can do since she is still refusing to apologize. This probably wasn't the update you were looking for, but it's all I can give at this moment. Hope you're all having a wonderful day and a better summer than I'm having. My BIL and mother are not together. I've asked the person to take it down, but they haven't responded, so I just thought I would make it clear. BIL and mom have not slept together or done anything weird, to my knowledge. Edit to add additional information provided by OP regarding the apology from my mom. She apologized to me back in March, shortly after my birthday. Felt sincere at the time. She explained that she just wanted to help my sister feel better and thought this was the right way to do it. She admitted that she was wrong for going along with the whole thing and for hurting me in the process. What she really wanted was for my sister and me to be close again, as she noticed we hadn't been as tight since my sister's divorce. Apparently, when I didn't call her on my birthday, which is a family tradition to thank your mom, she realized just how badly she messed up and decided she wanted me back in her life. As for any future events, like my potential wedding, I honestly haven't even started thinking about who I would invite or not. I'm hoping that by then things will have worked out and maybe the birth of her baby will bring my sister to her senses, leading her to apologize. The thought of having a wedding without my sister present feels so strange and unimaginable right now, but I guess I'll have to wait and see how things unfold. Update 3, September 7th, 2024. This is probably the hardest thing I've ever had to admit to myself. I wish it didn't have to come to this, but unfortunately, I think it's the only way I will ever get to live a normal life again. My sister has been telling our family members an entirely warped version of events. I only found out when I sent out save the dates. I got a call from an aunt telling me I was brave for inviting all these people after ruining my sister's life. I was so confused, so I asked her what she meant. She elaborated a little by saying that I was wrong for trying to seduce both my sister's husbands and that my fiancé was an idiot for supporting me. I laughed out of astonishment, not amusement. First, I told her to watch what she has to say about my soon-to-be husband. He's the only support I've had during this horrible moment in my life. Then, I told her what truly went down. She was shocked and didn't believe me. I told her she could easily go to my parents and brother to confirm it. Well, she informed me that my mother already confirmed things for her. I was so pissed off words can't describe the anger that I felt in that moment. It was like everything I had gone through in the past few years had all piled up, and I couldn't take it anymore. I just hung up the phone. I rang my mother, who was begging for my forgiveness a few months ago. I told her I was done. She supported my delusional sister in her crazy schemes, and I forgave her out of the goodness of my heart. I chose to put that behind me so I didn't lose my mother, but she went behind my back and sided with my sister in front of our extended family. She made everyone think I was callous enough to seduce my own BILs. She allowed people to spread lies about her own daughter. I told her I never want to see or speak to her again. I called my brother and asked him if he knew any of this had been happening. Thankfully, he didn't, neither did my dad. I then wrote a letter to my sister. The details of the letter held 4 main points. 1. That I was deeply sorry for everything she had been through. It did not mean I understood or forgave her actions, but I was apologetic for how things turned out. 2. She needed to seek help for what my former BIL put her through. 3. I was stunned by the fact she thought she could lie about what happened to everyone and get away with it. She had truly lost the right to call herself my sister from that point on. 4. I wished her the very best in life, but that I never wanted to see or hear from her ever again. She has caused me far too much pain to the point I'll never be able to forgive her. I will never speak to, reach out, or even entertain the idea of reconciling with my mother or sister again. It is up to my father and brother whether they choose to associate with them, but for me, everything is too unfixable. The lies have stacked up so much that there isn't a pair of scissors sharp enough to cut through. My fiancé and I have decided that with everything that has happened, we will just have a town hall wedding, just a couple witnesses and me and him. I'm so eternally grateful to have found him. He's my entire world, and without him here to talk me out of a breakdown, I might never have survived. Family is not always who you are born with, but those you meet along the way. I've been so incredibly lucky to have met some of the best people I can start my own family with. It is with great sadness that I make this update. It is my own fault for believing in the best of people. To think that I would ever get an apology is just so naive. But I think this may have been a blessing in disguise. At the very least, I'm choosing to see it like that. This chapter of my life is officially over, and I can now move on to better and brighter things. Thank you all for tuning into this portion of my life. Love you all, and hope that you all have better luck with family members than I have. Relevant comments. Comment. It's kind of hard to believe that brother and dad have no idea that so many people in the family are believing in this crazy narrative. OP. My dad doesn't speak to my mom's side at all. He hates them. He had no idea this fake story was going around to my aunties. Growing up, we would always defend him to my grandma, aunties, and uncles. It makes it worse that my sister went to them to tell them this distorted version of events when they don't even like our own dad. She's selfish and will do anything to make people believe her. It's partly why I don't bother correcting them. They're going to believe what they want to believe no matter how much proof I have. My mom's side already don't like me because I'm with a white guy, lol. They think I'm ashamed of my culture even though I was fully planning on having an Indian wedding. Now on to the next story. Story 9. I invited my stepbrother to my wedding after years of no contact, but he humiliated me during his unwanted speech. My name's Owen, 28M, and my fiancée, Lila, 27F. And I have been planning our dream wedding in Hawaii for nearly a year now. It's supposed to be the happiest day of our lives, but there's this one big issue that's been bugging me. Whether or not to invite my stepbrother, Lucas, 30M. Lucas and I have never gotten along. He's the kind of guy who's been spoiled rotten his entire life. My dad married his mom when I was 12 and Lucas was 14. Even back then, it was clear that he could do no wrong in the eyes of his mom. She and my dad catered to his every whim, while I was expected to just go along with it. Over the years, Lucas turned into one of those entitled, spoiled brats who think the world owes them something just because he exists. Now, Lila, being the sweetheart she is, thinks we should invite Lucas, hoping that maybe time has matured him. She's all about second chances and family, but I'm hesitant. The guy made my life hell growing up. Inviting him to my wedding feels like inviting a tornado into a house of cards. My parents, though, are insisting that if Lucas isn't invited, they won't come either. They think it's petty to hold on to old grudges, but they weren't the ones who had to deal with him. I'm really struggling with this decision. I want my wedding day to be perfect, and the idea of Lucas ruining it makes my stomach turn. But at the same time, I don't want to cause a huge family rift. I feel stuck and I don't know what to do. To give you some context, My parents got divorced when I was 10. It was a messy, drawn-out battle that left me with a lot of scars. I ended up spending most of my time with my mom while my dad went on to remarry pretty quickly. He married Lucas's mom when I was 12, and she wasted no time moving in with Lucas. I wasn't thrilled about the whole thing, but I tried to make the best of it. Lucas, on the other hand, made it clear from day one that he didn't like me. He was used to being the center of attention, and I was just an obstacle in his way. My stepmom was insistent that Lucas and I should be like real brothers, but it was obvious that wasn't going to happen. Lucas didn't want a brother, he wanted a punching bag. As the years went on, things only got worse. Lucas's bullying started off small, just mean comments and dirty looks, but as he got older, it escalated. He'd push me around, call me names, and spread rumors about me at school. And it wasn't just verbal abuse. There were accidents too, like the time he accidentally shoved me down the stairs and broke my arm. My dad would brush it off as boys being boys, and my stepmom would accuse me of being dramatic. My mom, who only had limited custody, tried to intervene, but there wasn't much she could do. One of the worst things Lucas ever did was destroy the one thing that meant the most to me, a model airplane my late grandfather had helped me build. I found it smashed to pieces in the garage one day after school. Lucas just stood there laughing, saying it was an accident. My dad and stepmom bought his story, and I was left picking up the pieces, both literally and figuratively. Through all of this, my complaints were largely ignored. My dad didn't want to hear it, and my stepmom always took Lucas's side. It was infuriating. I spent my teenage years feeling completely alone, like I didn't belong in my own family. High school was a nightmare, with Lucas spreading rumors that I was gay. Not that there's anything wrong with being gay, but the way he did it was purely malicious. He even sabotaged my friendships, telling lies that made people turn against me. The guy was relentless. The day I left for college was one of the happiest days of my life. It was like finally escaping a prison. I moved as far away as I could, limited contact with my family, and tried to start fresh. College was a breath of fresh air. I threw myself into my studies and ended up doing pretty well. I majored in business and landed a good job in sales after graduation. It was during my junior year that I met Lila. She was everything I could have hoped for in a partner. Kind, understanding, and supportive. We hit it off right away, and it wasn't long before we started dating seriously. Lila was the first person I told about Lucas and everything he put me through. She was horrified but also compassionate, encouraging me to put the past behind me and move forward. After graduation, I moved in with Lila, and we started building our life together. Things were going great, and I was the happiest I'd ever been. So, when I proposed to Lila last year, it felt like everything was finally falling into place. We started planning our dream wedding, and for a while it was all smooth sailing. But then came the issue of the guest list and the dreaded question. Should we invite Lucas? Lila knows everything about Lucas, but she also believes in giving people second chances. She suggested that maybe, just maybe, Lucas had changed. Maybe time had changed him, and he'd show up to the wedding as a decent human being. I wasn't so sure. I mean, people can change, but Lucas? I had my doubts. The wedding planning process has been mostly fun and exciting, but I was leaning heavily towards not inviting him. I mean, why should I? This is supposed to be one of the best days of my life, and the thought of Lucas being there just makes me anxious. But my parents, in this sense, my dad and stepmom, started pushing hard for Lucas to be invited. They said it would be petty not to include him, and even went as far as to say that if Lucas isn't invited, they won't come either. Talk about emotional blackmail. Lila, ever the optimist, thinks I should give Lucas a chance. She argues that people change and maybe Lucas will surprise me. But I can't shake the feeling that inviting him would be a mistake. I don't want to spend my wedding day looking over my shoulder, waiting for Lucas to pull some stunt. But at the same time, I don't want to create a massive family rift right before my wedding. It feels like I'm stuck between a rock and a hard place. After weeks of agonizing over it, I finally relented. I sent Lucas an invitation. I'm still not sure if it was the right decision, and honestly, it's been eating at me ever since. I know people can change, but Lucas? I'm not convinced. What if he shows up and ruins everything? So here I am, turning to you, Reddit, for advice. Did I make the right call by inviting Lucas? Or did I just set myself up for disaster? If you were in my shoes, what would you have done? Update 1. First off, I just want to thank everyone for the overwhelming response to my original post. The advice and support you all gave me were incredible, and it really helped me feel less alone in this. I wish I could say I have good news, but unfortunately, things didn't exactly go as planned. So, after much debate and sleepless nights, I decided to give Lucas a chance. I mean, it was my wedding, and I wanted to believe that maybe, just maybe, he could behave like a decent human being for once. I know some of you warned me against it, but with Lila and my parents pushing for it, I thought I should at least try to keep the peace. Plus, I kept telling myself that maybe he had changed, or at the very least, maybe he wouldn't do anything too awful at such a big event. Lucas arrived in Hawaii a few days before the wedding, acting like we were the best of friends. He was all smiles and charm, which immediately made me suspicious. Felt so fake, like he was putting on a show. During the rehearsal dinner, Lucas was cracking jokes and making small talk with everyone, but I couldn't help noticing the occasional snide comment he'd throw in when he thought no one else was listening. It was like he couldn't resist the urge to get under my skin, even in small, subtle ways. The real kicker came when I overheard Lucas talking to a couple of my groomsmen after dinner. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but I couldn't help it when I heard my name. Lucas was bragging about how he used to torment me when we were kids, laughing about some of the stuff he pulled like it was the funniest thing in the world. Here I was, giving this guy a chance to be part of one of the most important days of my life, and he was making a joke out of my childhood trauma. I didn't confront him then, maybe I should have, but I didn't want to cause a scene right before the wedding. Instead, I tried to brush it off, telling myself that it didn't matter as long as he didn't cause any trouble during the actual wedding. I could get through it. The wedding ceremony itself was beautiful. We had a gorgeous beachside setup with the ocean in the background, and everything looked amazing. Lila looked stunning as she walked down the aisle, and in that moment, I tried to focus on her and forget about everything else. We exchanged our vows, and for a brief moment, I felt like maybe everything was going to be okay. But even during the ceremony, I noticed Lucas standing off to the side, smirking. It was subtle and maybe no one else noticed, but I did. It was like he was just waiting for the right moment to strike. Then came the reception. Everything was going smoothly at first. The food was great, the music was perfect, and everyone seemed to be having a good time. Then, during the toasts, Lucas decided he wanted to make an impromptu speech. He wasn't even the best man, but he grabbed the mic before anyone could stop him. I should have known better. I should have stopped him, but I didn't want to make a scene. And that's when the nightmare began. Lucas's speech started off innocent enough, but it quickly turned into a roast of me. He started telling embarrassing childhood stories, some of which were true, but most were exaggerated or outright lies. He made fun of my appearance, my career, and even hinted that Lila was too good for me. The guests were awkwardly laughing, clearly uncomfortable, but Lucas just kept going. He was loving every second of it. The final blow came when Lucas casually said that he had slept with my high school girlfriend. He said it like it was nothing, like he was telling some funny joke. But the room went silent. Everyone who attended was extremely shocked and didn't know how to react. Lila's parents looked horrified. My friends were in disbelief, and I was just numb. I couldn't believe he'd actually done it, on my wedding day no less. My dad, who had been all about keeping the peace, finally snapped. He stormed up to Lucas, grabbed him by the arm, and physically dragged him out of the reception. But the damage was done. The mood of the reception was completely ruined. People started making excuses to leave early, and those who stayed were just awkwardly trying to pretend everything was fine. Lila and I tried to salvage the evening, but it was clear that the whole vibe had shifted. I felt like I was in a daze, barely processing what had just happened. That night, after everyone had left and Lila and I were alone, I broke down. I felt humiliated, betrayed, and so incredibly stupid for ever thinking that Lucas could change. I kept replaying his speech in my head, wondering how I could have let this happen. How could I have been so naive? Lila was amazing through all of this. She held me, reassured me, and told me that none of it mattered because we were married now, and that's what was important. But I couldn't shake the feeling of humiliation. So here I am again, Reddit. I don't know how to move forward from this. I don't know what to do about my relationship with my family, especially my dad, who was the one who pushed so hard for Lucas to be invited in the first place. I feel like I've been betrayed by everyone who told me this was the right thing to do. What do I do now? How do I deal with this betrayal? And how do I move on from what was supposed to be the happiest day of my life turning into one of the most humiliating? Any advice on how to navigate this mess would be greatly appreciated. I'm honestly at a loss. Update 2. Hey everyone. I want to start by saying thank you for all the support and advice after the wedding disaster. I've read through every comment and message, and it's been overwhelming in the best way. After the wedding, my parents reached out, practically begging for forgiveness. They admitted that they'd been wrong about Lucas and that they should have listened to me. My dad especially seemed genuinely remorseful. He said that he had enabled Lucas's behavior for years, always downplaying it as boys being boys. But after what happened at the wedding, he finally saw Lucas for who he really is. My stepmom, on the other hand, was a bit more defensive, but even she couldn't deny that Lucas's actions were out of line. They offered to pay for a new reception just for close family and friends to make up for what happened. They said it was the least they could do after everything Lucas ruined. I could tell they felt guilty, but honestly, their offer felt more like an attempt to smooth things over than a genuine apology. A new reception wouldn't erase what Lucas did or how I felt. Meanwhile, Lucas, being Lucas, sent me a text the day after the wedding. It was a string of mocking messages, gloating about how he'd made the night memorable and how I should thank him for giving everyone something to talk about. He even threw in some insults about how I was still the same loser I'd always been. I didn't respond. I couldn't. I just blocked his number. But the damage was done. His words stung, and I felt even more humiliated than before. After much thought and after reading through a lot of the advice you all gave me, I made a decision. I've blocked Lucas on everything, his number, social media, you name it. He's out of my life for good. I can't keep letting him drag me down, and I refuse to give him any more power over me. But that decision also led me to reconsider my relationship with my parents. Their apologies, while appreciated, felt too little, too late. They allowed Lucas to torment me for years, and only now, after the wedding disaster, are they admitting they were wrong. I'm torn between wanting to cut them off entirely and trying to find a way to rebuild a relationship with them. For now, I've decided to take a step back from my parents as well. I told them I needed some time to think and that I didn't want to see or talk to them for a while. They were upset, especially my dad, but they said they understood. I'm not sure how long this break will last, but I need space to process everything that's happened. Lila fully supports my decision to cut Lucas out and to distance myself from my parents, at least for now. She's been incredibly understanding, even though this whole situation has been hard on her too. It's not easy watching the person you love go through something like this, especially when it should have been a joyful time for us both. We've talked a lot about boundaries and how to protect our peace moving forward. Lila agrees that we should keep our distance from my family until we're both ready to deal with them again, if that time ever comes. We've even discussed the possibility of moving to a different state after the dust settles, just to start fresh without all the family drama hanging over our heads. So here I am again, asking for your advice. I've made the decision to cut Lucas out of my life permanently, but I'm still conflicted about what to do with my parents. They've apologized, but it feels like too little, too late. Should I give them another chance? Or is it better to just move on without them? Update 3. Hey everyone. I'm back with another update, and things have gotten pretty intense. After taking some time to think things through, I decided that I couldn't just let Lucas get away with what he did. I know revenge isn't always the answer, but after everything he's put me through, I felt like I needed to do something to finally stand up for myself. And honestly, I didn't want him to think he could just walk all over me without any consequences. So, here's what happened. I found out that Lucas had used his company's credit card to pay for his trip to Hawaii. I only discovered this because one of my friends from college works at the same company as Lucas, and they casually mentioned it while we were talking about the wedding. Apparently, Lucas had been bragging about how he got a free vacation on the company's dime, using some excuse about it being a business trip. My friend was shocked when they realized what Lucas had done, but they didn't want to get involved directly. That's when I got an idea. I anonymously reported Lucas's fraudulent expenses to his employer. I sent them detailed information, including the dates of the trip and the fact that it coincided perfectly with my wedding in Hawaii. I even threw in some of the more outrageous things Lucas had said about his free vacation, just to make sure they understood that this wasn't an innocent mistake. It didn't take long for things to blow up. A few days later, I heard through family members that Lucas had been called into a meeting with HR. They confronted him about the charges, and he tried to weasel his way out of it, but the evidence was too strong. Not only did they fire him on the spot, but they're also considering pressing charges for fraud. Lucas's life just went from smooth sailing to total disaster, and honestly, I don't feel bad about it. He had it coming. After the fallout from Lucas's firing, my parents reached out to me again. They were furious, of course. Somehow they found out that I was behind the anonymous report. Maybe Lucas figured it out and told them, I don't know. But they called me demanding to know why I would do something so vindictive. I didn't hold back. I told them that Lucas deserved every bit of it for what he did at my wedding and for all the years of torment he put me through. I reminded them that they were the ones who pushed so hard for Lucas to be invited, and now they were reaping the consequences. I told them that Lucas was dead to me, and if they didn't respect my decision to cut him out of my life, they would lose me too. My dad tried to argue, saying that I was overreacting and that family is family no matter what. But I stood firm. I gave them an ultimatum. Either they respect my boundaries and cut Lucas out of their lives as well, or they could consider themselves cut off from me. My stepmom started crying, saying that I was tearing the family apart. But I wasn't backing down. They were initially resistant. They kept trying to convince me to let bygones be bygones. But I made it clear that I wasn't going to budge. I told them that I had spent my entire life being pushed around by Lucas, and I wasn't going to let them guilt me into forgiving him just because it was convenient for them. So, Reddit, I'm turning to you again. Do you think I went too far by reporting Lucas's fraud? Was the ultimatum to my parents too harsh? I'm feeling really conflicted right now, and I could use some guidance on how to navigate this situation. Any advice or insight you could offer would be greatly appreciated. Update 4. Hey everyone. I'm back with what I hope will be my final update. It's been tough these past few weeks, but I'm finally starting to see a way forward. I've made some decisions about my family and how I'm going to move on from this whole mess. Thank you all for sticking with me through this. It's been incredibly helpful to have a place to share my thoughts and get advice. After the ultimatum I gave my parents, there was a lot of tension. They didn't contact me for a few days, and honestly, I didn't reach out either. I was giving them space to process everything, and I needed some time myself to figure out what I'd do if they chose Lucas over me. It was a nerve-wracking few days, to say the least. Eventually, my dad called. He was more subdued than I'd ever heard him, and I could tell that this whole situation had really shaken him. He told me that, after a lot of discussion, he and my stepmom had decided they were going to respect my wishes. They agreed to cut contact with Lucas, at least for the foreseeable future. My dad admitted that he couldn't fully cut his son out of his life, but he promised that he wouldn't force any kind of relationship between Lucas and me. He said he understood that Lucas had crossed too many lines and that it was time to stop making excuses for his behavior. It wasn't the perfect resolution I had hoped for, but it was something. I appreciated that they were willing to respect my boundaries, even if it took a lot of pushing to get there. My dad also apologized again for not taking my side sooner and for all the years of brushing off Lucas's behavior. It felt sincere, and while I'm not ready to forgive and forget just yet, it was a step in the right direction. With my parents agreeing to respect my boundaries, I've decided to start rebuilding my relationship with them, but slowly. I'm keeping them at arm's length for now, just to see if they really stick to their word. I need to protect myself and Lila from any more drama, especially as we start our married life together. Speaking of Lila, I couldn't ask for a better partner. We've talked a lot about the future and we've decided to take a big step together. We're moving out of state. We found a great opportunity in a different city, far away from all the family drama, and we're excited to start fresh. Feels like the right move for us, a chance to build our life. As for Lucas, I haven't heard from him since the fallout from his job. I don't know what he's doing, and honestly, I don't care. He's out of my life for good, and I'm determined to keep it that way. If my parents want to maintain some form of contact with him, that's their choice, but I won't be involved. I've set that boundary firmly, and they've agreed to respect it. So, this is where I'm at now. Lila and I are looking forward to our new life together in a new city, with a fresh start. I've decided to keep my relationship with my parents on a trial basis. They've shown that they're willing to change, but I'm not going to let my guard down completely just yet. Time will tell if they can really respect my boundaries and put my needs ahead of their desire to keep the peace with Lucas. Thank you, Reddit, for being there through all of this. Your advice and support have been invaluable, and I don't think I could have navigated this mess without you. Lila and I are excited about the future, and for the first time in a long time, I'm feeling hopeful. Here's to new beginnings and leaving the past where it belongs. Thanks again, everyone. Wishing you all the best. We have reached the end. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this, and give us your thoughts about the stories in the comments section. Thank you and see you in the next video.